Chapter 830. As the dark and hollow manna source trembled, the originally vast and boundless manna in it began to tumble and boil violently, turning into the energy of Hestia's drop of God's blood. The sudden change caught Noah off guard, causing his expression to change slightly. Hestia, who had dripped the God's blood on Noah's back, seemed to have noticed Noah's abnormality and spoke while sucking on her wounded finger. "What's wrong?" "No." Noah shook his head. "Nothing." Despite saying that, Noah's mind immediately sank into his body to explore the source of his manna. After confirming it repeatedly, Noah had to admit it. The manna stored in the manna source had indeed turned into the same energy as Hestia's drop of God's blood. Not only that, even the manna that was constantly being generated and swallowed by the dark and hollow manna source had turned into the same energy in an instant. It was as if the manna source could no longer contain manna. This change made Noah's heart more or less uneasy. After all, many of Noah's means required manna to be used. Now all the manna in his body had been transformed into another energy under the effect of the manna source, which had a great impact on Noah. Even the gate of Babylon required manna to be opened. Noah's magic tricks and spells also required the use of magic power. What's more, when using authority, it also consumed manna. Without manna, Noah's strength would plummet to the point where he would not be able to defeat a slightly stronger servant, let alone a god that he had once killed. Before arriving in this world, Noah felt that there seemed to be other secrets in his manna source. He didn't expect the secret to be like this. After absorbing other types of energy, would the stored manna be transformed into that type of energy? No, that's not right. Noah subconsciously felt that something was wrong and secretly muttered to himself in his heart. If my manna source can really transform the stored manna into that type of energy after absorbing other types of energy, then when the manna source absorbs the manna I generate, it should turn back into manna, right? Thinking of this, Noah immersed his mind more in the manna source in his body and had an idea. "Let's give it a try." After secretly saying this in his heart, Noah's mind moved. The manna source that was originally filled with inexplicable energy suddenly trembled again. The unknown energy inside suddenly tumbled and boiled violently like the previous manna. It didn't take long for the unknown energy to transform into magic power. Aware of this change, Noah couldn't help being overjoyed. Yes, the secret of the manna source isn't that it can convert the stored manna into other types of energy after absorbing other types of energy. Instead, it's like a converter that can convert manna and absorbed energy into each other. In order to verify this idea, Noah kept changing the energy in the manna source. One moment it was manna. Another moment it was the unknown energy. According to Noah's intention, these two types of energy could be transformed into each other at will without the slightest stagnation and obstruction. For the time being, I'll name the energy transformed from Hestia's divine blood as divine power. Noah silently observed the changes in the manna source. After absorbing a trace of divine power, the manna source seems to remember the form of divine power, and can transform manna into divine power at will, and vice versa. This is the hidden effect of the manna source, right? Noah was suddenly immersed in the changes in his manna source. At the same time, Hestia also started her work. Clang! After dripping the divine blood on Noah's back, a circle of ripples immediately appeared on Noah's back, and then a faint blue light bloomed and covered his back. In the faint blue light, Hestia gently tapped on it with her finger. Rows of obscure mysterious characters suddenly appeared out of thin air in the faint blue light, as if they were automatically arranged, rotating back and forth, undulating with each other. Not long after, these obscure and mysterious characters arranged themselves into a sequence, like a projection, like a template, and presented themselves in front of Hestia. At the same time, a complex pattern began to appear on Noah's back. It was a pattern that looked like both a furnace and a torch. Dense lines of small characters were distributed around the pattern, as if they were embellishing the pattern that looked like both a furnace and a torch, giving the pattern a mysterious color out of thin air. Those small characters were the sacred characters, used by the gods in this world. Using divine blood as a medium, the sacred characters were engraved on the bodies of the people in the mortal world, forming a favor, and continuously exploring the possibilities in the body of the person who received this favor. At this time, the existence named Noah Dole became a book. A blank book. What Hestia needed to do was to write down the path, experiences and stories that Noah had gone through in this book, and present all the experiences that Noah had gained in the following life in black and white form. People called it ability value. It was divided into 4 aspects: basic ability, level, magic and skills. These were all the enhancements that could be given to Noah. Therefore, Hestia almost immediately looked at Noah's ability value. Noah Dole LV. 1 strength, I0 durability, I0 dexterity, I0 agility, I0 magic power, I0 magic, skills protection from the world permanent skills. Equivalent to luck. Events that had a direct relationship with luck would eventually lead to the most favorable results. Because it needed to be strengthened in the following tempering. Each item of the basic ability was the lowest level, I level, and the level was also the lowest level, LV1. Even if Noah was strong now, these values needed to be developed in the future. It was similar to the ability of strengthening, and it had no direct relationship with Noah's own strength. Next was magic and skills. This world also had magic. However, it was not magic in the broad sense of the moon world, but the kind of magic referred to in Western fantasy, which was similar to the magic in the world of fairy tale. Originally, the magic in this world was only a power that could be used by a certain race. For example, the elves, who were favored by nature, were called a magic race. However, the favor of God could explore any possibilities in the human body, so that anyone could learn magic. However, the number of magic that could be explored through the favor was fixed. At least 1. At most 3. Generally, people who received the favor could only use 1 type of magic. If someone could use 2 types of magic, then this alone could make that person a delicious cake among the family members. How many types of magic a person could obtain depended on the empty column in the ability value. As for skills, they were special effects that could be brought under certain conditions, or they could strengthen one's own abilities. Different from magic, there was no limit to the number of skills. The similarity between magic and magic was that the discovery of both was related to the experience points that the person obtained. In addition, it was also related to one's nature or interest. If one's basic abilities and levels were the same at the very beginning, then magic and skills were powers that could be discovered at the very beginning. Although Noah did not discover any magic, there were 3 empty columns, which meant that Noah could obtain a maximum of 3 types of magic in the future. In the skill column, the protection from the world skill made Hestia completely stunned. What? What does this mean? Noah, who was studying his own mana source, heard Hestia's voice and suddenly came back to his senses. He looked at Hestia behind him. What's wrong? Hearing this, Hestia didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at Noah with a strange expression. It was as if she was looking at an extremely rare thing, which made Noah a little scared. Chapter 831. Noah Dole LV. 1 strength, I0 durability, I0 dexterity, I0 agility, I0 magic power, I0 magic, skill frowny face protection from the world, permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. Because the ability values engraved on the back were all written in the sacred text. Under normal circumstances, if one wanted to know what their ability value was, they would have to ask God to translate it and copy it down. Only then would they know. Noah didn't even know much of this world's language, let alone the divine script, that was commonly used among the gods. Therefore, he could only ask Hasti to translate the ability value and copy it down on a piece of paper to know what his ability value was. After a while, Noah finally recognized the ability value on the piece of paper that Hasti had copied down. He was speechless. Protection from the world. Permanent skill? Equivalent to luck? Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result? Didn't that mean that in the future, Noah would truly become a lucky person with good luck? Using the ability value of a servant to express it, with this protection from the world skill, Noah's luck should be considered to have reached X level, right? Even if it wasn't X, It should be at least A++ level. The most important thing was that a person's ability and magic were generally determined by the experience value, wishes, and nature of the person. Noah had just engraved grace, so naturally, he didn't have any experience value. In other words, he didn't experience anything that could cause this skill to appear. Then the appearance of this skill was completely due to Noah's wish or nature. That's why Hesti looked at Noah with such a strange expression. Wish related to luck. Ability to attract protection from the world? No matter which one it was, there was something that made Hesti feel strange. On the other hand, Noah wasn't surprised that he had such a skill. After all, Gaia and Aleia had said that the world would always stand on Noah's side. In that case, it was excusable that the skill protection from the world was born from this essence. Noah could only grumpily smile at Hestia, who was staring at him with her cute big round eyes. He then pointed at a place on his ability index. Hesti, what's the 0 behind the basic ability? Because he had just engraved grace, Noah's basic ability, whether it was strength, durability, dexterity, agility, or magic, they were all at the lowest I level. Then after the I, what is the 0 in brackets? That's proficiency, Hestia snapped, still staring at Noah. Every basic ability has 10 stages. After meeting a certain level of proficiency, it can be upgraded. You haven't done any training yet, so it's naturally 0 at the beginning. To be specific, if Noah wanted to upgrade his basic ability from I to H, he had to get a certain level of proficiency. The maximum proficiency value for each stage was 99. I, 0 99H, 100 199G, 200 299F, 300 399E, 400 499D, 500 599C, 600 699B, 700 799A, 800 899S, 900 999 inches. Other words, when Noah's basic ability proficiency reached 100, it could be upgraded to H stage. If it reached the highest 900, it could be upgraded to S stage. According to the current proficiency estimate, the proficiency limit of basic ability was 999. Strength, durability, dexterity, and magic. Among the 5 basic abilities, the more frequently Noah used his ability, the more his proficiency would increase. The closer it was to the highest value of 999, which was the upper limit of S stage, the slower the growth rate would be. According to what you said, you already have a certain combat ability. Then, at least when you reach LV1, your improvement speed should be very fast. Speaking of this, Hestia was a little happy again. Moreover, the number of spells you can use is the highest 3. Your future achievements will be extraordinary. How can a person with a sword win against an opponent who can set off a sea of fire? Therefore, the difference between having magic and not having magic is simply too big. If there is magic, there is no problem to become the enemy of 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 people. The existence of magic is so important. At least this is the case in this world. In other words, magic is a person's biggest trump card. It is a killer skill that can reverse the situation. Noah could also understand this point. Take Yanfeng and Qili for example. That priest's close combat power was definitely not much worse than Noah's, but he was bombarded by Noah's magic cannon to the point that he could not fight back at all. The difference was that one used cold weapons, and the other used hot weapons. Then who won and who lost was obvious at a glance. Our family will start from here. The expression on Hestia's face slowly melted, and she put on the most gentle and most holy smile since Noah saw her. And you are the backbone of this family called Hestia. Looking at Hestia's holy smile that was no different from the name of the goddess, Noah couldn't help but smile. Family? Maybe it's not bad. As mentioned before, even if it was a clan tribe, there were all kinds of different natures. Some families' main activity was to explore the dungeon, some families' main activity was to do business, some families would sell equipment and weapons, some family would also engage in farming, and there was everything that one could think of. After forming the family, Hestia asked Noah for his opinion, and let him decide what kind of existence the family should have. Noah didn't hesitate to choose to explore the dungeon. In a big labyrinth that could produce monsters, Noah would definitely not lack opponents to fight. In this way, Noah's ability could be improved. In other words, Noah decided to become an adventurer. Hestia's family currently only had one member, Noah. Only when there were members could a family of the gods be established. Whether it was establishing a family or becoming an adventurer, it was necessary to register in the guild that managed Eulalie. So under Hestia's lead, Noah came to the guild headquarters. It was a tall building similar to a temple. In the hall on the first floor of such a building, there was a flow of people that was not inferior to the people coming and going on the street outside. At this time, Hestia had already gone to apply for the establishment of a family. She patted her full upper body and skipped to help Noah to become an adventurer. Noah was left alone in the guild hall. In such a situation, Noah didn't feel good at all. There was no other reason. It was because Noah was standing in front of a notice board, looking at the most conspicuous parchment pasted in the middle of the notice board. The corners of his mouth twitched constantly. It was a piece of parchment with a portrait drawn in the form of a sketch. Below the portrait were words written all over it. At the bottom of the parchment, in a very conspicuous way, there was a bounty of 1 million yen. There was no need to think about what this parchment meant. Sensing the scorching gazes from the guild hall that pierced into his back, even Noah felt a surge of anger in his heart. Loki, I'll remember this. As soon as this sentence fell, there was a commotion at the door of the guild hall. Under the lead of a group of adventurers, the goddess with a red ponytail quickly rushed into the hall. Looking around, she immediately saw Noah standing in front of the notice board, and her face was overjoyed. Found you. The one who came was Loki. Loki, who put a bounty on Noah and pushed him into the fire pit. So Noah smiled. Loki actually delivered himself to the door. Chapter 832. Found you. As soon as he rushed into the guild hall, Loki shouted and immediately rushed in the direction of Noah. Come back to Loki's clan with me, little guy. Hearing this voice, Noah, who was standing in front of the notice board with his back to the entrance of the guild hall, didn't even move. When Loki was only 1 meter away from him, he suddenly turned around and stretched out one of his feet. Because the forward momentum was too fierce, Loki, without any accident, pounced on Noah's original position. Looking at the notice board that was getting closer and closer to his face was shocked. Just as he wanted to stop, his foot fiercely turned on Noah's outstretched foot. Thus, Loki's entire body was suspended in the air and pounced forward. Bang! After a loud collision, Loki, who had smashed into the notice board with his arms and legs spread out, couldn't even make a sound. He slowly slid down. Seeing this scene, many people in the guild hall couldn't help but cover their faces. It was obvious that they felt the pain just by looking at it. Only Noah, looking at Loki, who slid on the ground like a corpse, revealed an emotionless smile. You actually dare to appear in front of me? Loki's entire body trembled. He raised his head with a stiff neck like a clockwork. Looking at Noah's unfriendly expression, he covered his red nose and laughed dryly. Don't be so hostile. This time, I'm not here to fight with you. I have no ill intentions. No ill intentions? Noah pointed at the bounty list posted in the most conspicuous place in the center of the notice board, the corner of his eyes twitching as he looked at Loki. No ill intentions? If you don't have ill intentions, why did you directly put me up for a bounty? Then what are you going to do when you have ill intentions? Perhaps it was because he felt that the current Noah was too dangerous. Loki even broke out in a cold sweat. At this time, there was another commotion at the entrance of the guild. Of course, this time, it wasn't because someone was causing trouble, but because someone had come in and made everyone in the guild hall exclaim in surprise. A long golden hair that reached his waist swayed like a radiance. His expression was calm and steady from beginning to end. There was an atmosphere that seemed to make the surroundings fall into silence. Just like that, the girl walked into the guild hall without anyone noticing, entering everyone's field of vision. Everyone in the guild hall subconsciously held their breaths as they gazed at this young girl, who was as beautiful as a goddess. In fact, she was even more beautiful than most goddesses. It was as if they were afraid of disturbing her beauty, causing the originally noisy guild hall to revert to its original state of silence. Under such circumstances, the two Amazons with healthy wheat-colored skin following behind the girl were robbed of all the spotlight, and they did not attract much attention. Where is it? Didn't you say that you found him? Even if you found it, why are you so excited? Tiona's excited voice and Tiona's somewhat helpless voice finally woke up the people in the hall who had their consciousnesses taken away by AIC. The silence that pervaded the air was successfully broken. On the other hand, AI had already turned her gaze in the direction of the notice board and met Noah's deep, pitch-black eyes. Then, AI's gaze never moved away again. Being stared at by AI's clear, emotionless eyes, Noah raised his brows. Even though there was no emotion in AIC's eyes, Noah could tell that the girl seemed to care a lot about him. Could it be that the previous battle made this girl named AI feel unreconciled? Being forced to retreat by someone who didn't accept the favor should be very uncomfortable for those conceited people, right? Moreover, from Hastia's surprised look after hearing that Noah forced AI to retreat, it could be seen that AI seemed to be quite famous among the spawns. Then the possibility of this was even greater. Of course, Noah didn't know that he guessed wrong, but that was something that would only be mentioned in the future. Tiona finally saw Noah standing in front of the notice board. Her eyes glinted as she pointed in Noah's direction and shook Tiona's hand. There. It's really him. Tiona stood up in surprise. He actually ran straight to the guild headquarters. Isn't this telling everyone that he's here? On the other hand, Loki seemed to have seen his savior as he hurriedly yelled, "Hurry up and save me." Upon hearing that, Noah almost choked on his breath. Noah hadn't done anything to this crazy goddess yet, right? In the end, with Loki's yelling, didn't it seem like Noah was going to do something to her? This caused the anger in Noah's heart to surge to his face, and his face darkened. Do you really want to die? Rocky's body trembled once more. He shut his mouth and didn't dare to say another word. Seizing this opportunity, the younger sister of the pair of Amazon sisters, the lively and cheerful Tiona, rushed over. When Noah thought that she was going to do something, she suddenly hugged Noah's arm. Caught you, little big brother. Little big brother? When did I become this young lady's big brother? Also, why did she add the word little? While Noah was at a loss, his other hand suddenly felt restrained by a soft touch. You can't escape this time. The elder of the Amazon sisters, the calmer Tiona, hugged Noah's other hand and smiled sweetly. Well, I'm also wondering why you can force AIC to retreat without receiving the favor. So come to our clan tribe. After hearing Tiona's words, AIC, who was walking over, stared at Noah with a more urgent gaze, making Noah feel more and more that this girl was unwilling to accept the previous battle. Noah, who was being hugged tightly by a beautiful girl on both sides and had his hands restrained, was almost rendered speechless by this sudden development. By the time Noah realized what he should do, an exasperated and childish voice rang out. Here. Do. What? Do. With such a loud shout, Hestia rushed over from the other side of the guild, her delicate face full of anger. Let go of that man. He's mine. Noah, who was pincered by the Amazon sisters, almost fell down. The dark, emotional gazes from the surrounding people told Noah this. First, there was the glorious deed of breaking into the bath of the goddesses. Then, there was the situation where he was surrounded by a group of beautiful girls. Then there was Hestia's words that made people think of. After tomorrow, Noah would become completely famous. However, at this time Loki, who had been lying on the ground pretending to be dead, suddenly jumped up and toward the angry Hestia without hesitation. Clank. When the crisp sound rang out, Hestia and Loki simultaneously covered their heads with their hands and squatted on the ground with tears in their eyes as they cried out in pain. Seeing this, Noah finally couldn't help but yell. Are you here to make fun of me? Noah. Hestia raised her head, still covering her red forehead, and looked at Noah with tears in her eyes. Her appearance was so cute that a large group of adventurers around her almost killed them. Why are you with a woman from Loki's family? Are you going to abandon me? I'm begging you. Noah felt like his chest was suffocating. Don't use words that can easily cause misunderstandings, okay? However, Noah's words were drowned out by a burst of laughter that sounded like it was trying to be brave. I knew it was you as soon as I heard your voice, Shorty. Loki, who was also covering his forehead, stared at Hestia with tears in his eyes and burst out laughing like he was about to cry. Aren't you hiding in Hephaestus' house like a parasite? Did Hephaestus finally kick you out because she couldn't stand it anymore? Cool. Hestia also put on a fake smile as if she had been stabbed in the chest by a sword. What a pity, Hephaestus isn't as petty as you. After that, Hestia and Loki looked at each other with sparks in their eyes. Chapter 833. Crackle Crackle. Similar electric currents seemed to vibrate from the gazes of Hestia and Loki. Of course, there wasn't really such a sound. It was just that Hestia and Loki couldn't wait to push their foreheads against each other with bitter looks on their faces. It was as if there were electric sparks flying from the gazes of the two goddesses. From the very beginning, when Noah first met Hestia, he had guessed that Hestia and Loki actually didn't get along well. Now that he saw with his own eyes that they couldn't wait to devour each other, Noah was even more certain of his guess. The relationship between Hestia and Loki was definitely worse than Noah had imagined. Even Aes, Tiona, and Tione looked at each other in dismay. They didn't seem to know why Hestia and their overgod were at loggerheads as soon as they met. However, in the next second, Hestia cast her gaze on Tiona and Tione, who were tightly holding onto one of Noah's arms. Her freely hanging ponytails immediately stood up. You Amazons over there, how long are you going to hold on to my Noah? Hestia said as she stepped forward. Tiona and Tione, who couldn't react in time, separated themselves from Noah and stood in front of Noah with their arms spread open like hens protecting their chicks. They glared fiercely at Aes and the others. I'm telling you, Noah has now joined my family tribe. You're not allowed to have any ideas about him anymore. Both Tiona and Tione were stunned when they heard this. Not to mention Tiona and Tione, even AIC was taken aback. She couldn't react to the situation at all. Only Loki, who had been squinting his eyes as if he had heard some bad news, jumped up and looked at Noah in disbelief. You've joined the family tribe of this poor shorty? Noah, who no longer had the strength to play with these girls, could only nod tiredly, which made the corner of Loki's mouth twitch. You could have chosen anyone else's family, but you just had to choose this poor shorty's family. Do you know that not only does this shorty's family not have a single person, they don't even have a single cent? Right now, they're living in someone else's house like a rice worm? Loki looked at Noah as if he was looking at an unprecedented fool. If you follow this shorty, you may not even have a place to stay. Do you want to end up starving to death on the streets? What are you so proud of? Hearing Loki's words, before Noah could say anything, Hestia flew into a rage. If it weren't for the fact that I only came to the lower realm recently, my clan would definitely be stronger than you. Idiot. Loki bent down and put his face right in front of Hestia's face. In the lower realm, there's a saying of first come, first served. Who told you not to come before? Now, you can only be a short and poor goddess. Being mocked by Loki, Hestia's face was distorted, but she couldn't say a word to refute. After all, what Loki said was basically the truth. Cece? You can't refute it, can you? Loki smiled proudly and looked at Noah. I advise you, if you want to regret it, it's best to do it now. Have you accepted this shorty's favor? If not, it's not too late to regret it now. Noah won't go back on his word. Hestia glared at Loki. Besides, he has already accepted my favor. Hearing this, AIC, who was at the side, suddenly spoke. Then, before he joined your clan, did he really not accept any favor? AIC's sudden words not only stunned Hestia, but also Loki and the rest of the group. It couldn't be helped. Although AIC's appearance was comparable to that of a goddess, she had always been silent and taciturn. Once someone's attention was focused on something else, it was easy to overlook her existence. If AIC didn't speak, Hestia and the others would probably forget that she was here. This caused Hestia to forget to answer for a moment. Only then did Loki react. His narrowed eyes opened slightly, revealing a pair of pupils filled with wisdom. I also want to ask you, Shorty, did this little guy not accept any favor before? I know what you're thinking, but I can tell you clearly that the favor on Noah's body was engraved by me, and it was not long ago. Hestia crossed her arms. I heard that before that, your clan swordswoman couldn't do anything to my clan's Noah, right? Noah and AIC's eyes met again. However, Noah only glanced at her for a moment before moving away. AIC kept looking at Noah as if she was in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. I don't believe it. Loki's eyes flickered as he looked at Noah provocatively. I suspect that you have already received the favor. If your favor was engraved just now, then your basic ability value should all be at the lowest eye level, and your proficiency should be 0. If you really just received the favor, then let me see your ability value. After saying that, Loki aced Tiona, and Tiona turned their gazes to Noah and stared at him without letting him go. Damn you, Loki! Hestia was furious. Do you think I would lie? Loki ignored Hestia and kept staring at Noah with a provocative smile on his face. In this regard, Noah sighed. Are you testing me? Anyway, you don't want to hide it, do you? Loki shrugged. Then what's wrong with letting me see it? Anyway, you saw me naked in the bathhouse, didn't you? Noah was immediately speechless. Although it was not intentional, this matter was indeed Noah's fault. At that moment, Tiona also joined in the fun. Little brother, just let us see it. How about we also let you see our bodies? The corner of Noah's mouth began to twitch again. The people of the Amazon race were not reserved. The people of this race were more open than the people of any country Noah had ever seen. It was said that once they took a fancy to a man, they would think of ways to bring him home at all costs. What was done, which was more valiant than anything else. Therefore, Noah did not doubt that once he said yes, the two girls in front of him would immediately do as he said. Even AIC stared at Noah without saying a word, and Noah could not stand it anymore. Wait! Hestia protested. An adventurer's ability value is a secret that belongs to the adventurer and his clan. There is no obligation to disclose it to the public. Even guilds can only disclose the adventurer's level and dungeon activity records to the extent that it does not affect the clan. As a role model for others, what right do you have to ask us to let you see it? This time, it was Loki's turn to be speechless. Forget it, Hestia, there's nothing to hide. Noah patted Hestia's shoulder and looked at Loki. Anyway, my basic ability is still in its initial state, so it doesn't matter if I let you see it. Consider it as paying for the bathhouse incident. In the future, you are not allowed to bring this up again, or else don't blame me for being rude. No problem. Loki agreed without hesitation. Not only me, but I'll also make sure that the other goddesses that you saw won't trouble you anymore. Then we'll be even, right? Oh. Noah was a little surprised. You can make the other goddesses shut up? Do you think I'm that poor shorty? Loki said proudly. My clan is one of the 2 strongest clans in the whole of Eulalia. If I say so, the other goddesses will respect me. Noah nodded indifferently, but he felt a little relieved that this matter had come to an end. At least, he did not have to worry about things like being wanted in the future. Noah still cared about his reputation. 5 minutes later, Noah left the guild hall with Hestia, who was very proud of herself. Loki and the others looked at Noah's back as he left, as if they could recall the ability value that they had just seen. They fell into silence. It's true. Tiona muttered to herself. That little brother really just received the favor. That's right. Tiona nodded. Magic is empty. Although there is a skill, and it's such a strange skill, it doesn't have the effect of hiding the ability value. Since it's not a skill or magic effect, then I really haven't heard of any way to hide the true value of the ability value. That ability value can't be fake. 3 empty magic slots, a skill that can summon luck, and the power to force Aslan away without receiving the favor. Loki's eyes became brighter and brighter, and in the end, it became annoyance. Damn it! Why would such a rare little fellow be kidnapped by that poor shorty? AIC, who was left behind, didn't say anything. Her eyes flickered as she watched Noah leave. After his back disappeared, she murmured, "What a pity. What should I do to be like him?" Chapter 834. If one were to look down from the top, the city called Eulalia was like a cake that had been cut into 8 equal portions. It was circular in shape, with 8 streets radiating from the center of the city, extending from 8 directions to the city walls surrounding the city. Didn't it look like a cake that had been cut into 8 equal portions? According to the directions of the streets, Eulalia was divided into 8 main streets, namely East Street, West Street, South Street, North Street, Northeast Street, Southeast Street, Northwest Street, and Southwest Street. There were a total of 8 main streets. The location of the Mistress of Plenty that Noah had visited was on the side of the West Street. Meanwhile, the main street in front of the guild headquarters was the Northwest Main Street. Because the guild headquarters was located there, most of the pedestrians on this street were adventurers. After all, the guild was the organization that managed the entirety of Olalai and the dungeons. Exploring the dungeons in Olalai required the guild to go through all sorts of procedures and seek assistance from the guild. As long as one was an adventurer who explored the dungeons as a profession, they would frequently visit the guild. Therefore, there were many adventurers on the Northwest Main Street. Because of this, on this busy street, there were many shops that sold to adventurers. There were weapon shops that sold weapons and armor, potion shops that sold recovery potions, item shops that sold all kinds of items, and taverns that served as entertainment for adventurers. After leaving the guild headquarters, Hestia mysteriously held Noah's hand and led him in a certain direction. In Hestia's opinion, Noah, who had just joined her clan, was like her child. Therefore, when she held Noah's hand, she didn't feel that it was inappropriate at all. It was as if she was taking care of a child. However, from an outsider's point of view, Hestia, who was holding Noah's hand, looked like a child instead. She was a very naughty child who kept pulling her big brother, Noah, and running forward. It was a heartwarming scene that made people smile. However, when the passers-by caught sight of Hestia's breasts, the atmosphere turned a little lecherous. It had to be said that Hestia's figure was indeed very attractive. However, he didn't have the slightest bit of self-awareness. Noah could only say helplessly, "Where are you taking me, Hestia?" "Let's go to Hephaestus." Hestia replied without turning her head, but she did not forget to explain to Noah. "Hephaestus is the divine friend that I am currently staying with. She is also the god of forging who is known as the fire god in the heavenly realm. Her clan tribe also uses forging as their main business. The works created by the members under her have even become a brand. That is not only a clan tribe that is very famous in Eulalia, but also in the world. Hephaestus." Noah scratched his cheek. "Is it the divine friend you mentioned before who is about to kick you out of the door because he's reaching his limit?" Hestia's happy expression withered, but she still said stubbornly, "It's okay. We won't be staying here for long anyway. With your ability, Noah, we will be able to earn enough money to buy a house very soon." "Wait a minute," Noah said in a strange voice. "Are you going to take me to your divine friend's place to live? What's wrong? Don't you like it?" Hestia turned around and asked in confusion. "But we can only live there temporarily, right?" "Of course not." Noah stopped and pulled Hestia, who was holding his hand, to stop as well. He looked at Hestia with an annoyed expression. "We can find a house by ourselves now. Why do we have to wait until later?" Hestia was startled and asked with some uncertainty. "But didn't you say that you just came to Eulalia and don't have the common currency here?" "I just came to Eulalia and don't have the common currency here, but it doesn't mean that I don't have money." Noah sighed. "Although I don't have the currency here, I have gold, gems, and other precious items. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange them for money, right?" Hestia opened her eyes wide and looked at Noah in a daze. After a while, she spoke as if she had just woken up from a dream. "In other words, we actually have money?" Noah nodded heavily. Hestia asked with an expectant look on her face. "How much do you have?" "How much?" Noah did not know how to answer. It was not because there was too little, but because there was too much. There were mountains of gold and silver treasures piled up in the gate of Babylon. Who knew how much there was? Moreover, Noah's gate of Babylon had 3 functions: automatic recovery, automatic repair, and automatic replenishment. Among them, Automatic replenishment was the function that could replenish the consumed items after a period of time. Noah found that if he used up all the gold and silver treasures, after a period of time, the amount of gold and silver treasures in the treasure vault would be restored to the original amount. Obviously, the gold and silver treasures that were consumed could also be replenished. So, the question of how much was still important. Therefore, Noah could only answer, "It's definitely enough to buy a house, no matter how big the house is." Hestia blinked her eyes, but her eyes were getting brighter and brighter. Her young face gradually became excited. In the end, Hestia threw herself on Noah. "Noah, you're really my lucky star." Being hugged by Hestia, Noah immediately felt something that could easily change shape in front of him. It was a wonderful feeling that would make any man howl in joy. Unable to hide his hesitation, Noah could only use his hands and feet to pull Hestia off his body like an octopus. "Can you not hug me so easily? We're on the street." "Well, it doesn't matter. As long as it's Noah, I'm fine with it." Hestia did not realize that she had said something that would make people think of Pian Pian. She happily pulled Noah and ran forward. "It's so good to have my own house. Let's see who dares to call me a poor shorty in the future. Does having a house mean you're not poor? Besides, the house is not yours. Even if you're not a poor god, you're still a shorty." Noah didn't say anything similar to the above. He just said that, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "So, where are you going to take me now?" "Let's go to Hephaestus." Hestia gave the same answer as before, but with a different reason. "I want to introduce my favorite child to my best friend. I also want to say goodbye to Hephaestus. After all, she has been taking care of me for a long time." Noah had a helpless expression on his face when he heard Hestia's words, but he did not know when the corners of his mouth had started to rise. This Lolita goddess was not only cute in appearance, but also in personality. Under Hestia's lead, Noah came to a blacksmith shop on Northwest Main Street. It was a large blacksmith shop. At the entrance of the shop, there was a plaque with the words Kappa Phi Alpha Iota Sigma Tau Omicron C. Although Noah did not recognize the words on the plaque, he knew that they were sacred characters. Sacred characters as a plaque? That should be the brand that Hestia mentioned, right? Hestia pushed the door open and entered. "Hephaestus, I'm back." When Hestia's voice sounded, Noah followed her into the large blacksmith shop. Then Noah saw her. A woman with bright red short hair, and an eye patch on her right eye was standing in front of Hestia. She looked like she was in her 20s. Her face was stern, and her tone was very unfriendly. "Did you go to the bookstore to read again?" The smile on Hestia's face suddenly froze, and she became a little timid. "Hephaestus, are you angry?" Alas! The goddess called Hephaestus by Hestia's side. Rather than saying that he was angry, it would be more accurate to say that he was worried. Chapter 835. Looking at Hestia, who was obediently standing in front of her with her head lowered and listening to her instructions, Hephaestus' tone was stern and a little exasperated. "I say, Hestia, although we do have an ill-fated relationship, I let you stay with me temporarily because you just came to this world. But after you came here, you didn't form a clan or go out to work. Instead, you hid in your room all day long and went to the bookstore to read books. If you continue like this, I will really kick you out." Hephaestus had said this many times, and Hestia had heard it many times, so she was already familiar with it. In the beginning, Hephaestus just wanted to scare Hestia so that she wouldn't be so unmotivated. However, as the number of times increased, Hestia didn't seem to have any remorse at all. Hephaestus really began to consider carrying out her orders. She believed that if this continued, it wouldn't be long before Hestia would be kicked out by the angry Hephaestus. Fortunately, Hestia was indeed lucky today. "This time, I'm not idling around, Hephaestus," Hestia hurriedly said. "I've already registered with the guild and formed a clan," Hestia said. "Formed a clan?" Hephaestus' stern face suddenly froze for a moment, and then she was surprised. "In other words, you've already found a child to join your clan?" A clan of a god could only be formed if there were members. Even if there was only one, as long as there was one member, then the clan tribe could be established. On the other hand, If the number of clan members dropped to 0, then even if the main god didn't want to disband the clan, the guild would cancel the registration of the clan of the god. Since Hestia had formed a clan, it meant that she had already found a member. When Hephaestus first said that she would kick Hestia out of the house, Hestia also tried to look for a member of her clan. However, Hestia had just descended to this world and didn't have much fame. Secondly, Hestia didn't have a good family background. She couldn't even provide a place to live, let alone food and clothing. Therefore, who would be willing to join Hestia's clan? After all, the grace of a god was the same, and there was no difference. Under such circumstances, if one were to choose to join a clan tribe, then naturally, anyone would first choose to join a clan tribe that was famous and powerful. For someone like Hestia who was not famous, had no strength, and had no family background, it wasn't that it was impossible to find a clan member, but it was very difficult. Therefore, even the old owner of the bookstore who took good care of Hestia was not willing to join Hestia's family clan. Now that Hestia suddenly said that she had formed a clan, it really surprised Hephaestus. Only then did Hephaestus notice Noah standing at the door. At this time, Noah was looking at the well-made weapons placed in the glass cabinets in the shop. It seemed that he didn't intend to disturb Hestia and Hephaestus. When she saw Noah, Hephaestus thought of something and frowned. Isn't he the pervert who went to the bathhouse to peep on Loki's wanted list? It seemed that Noah was really famous. The first member of your clan wouldn't be him, right? Hephaestus's face, which had just relaxed, tightened again because of distress. Are you sure you won't be deceived? Hephaestus was a typical example of overworrying. She was worried that Hestia would be mediocre. And when Hestia found something to do, she was worried that she would be deceived. She was like Hestia's mother or sister. However, there was no other way. Noah did break into the bathing place dedicated to the goddesses, and saw nearly half of the goddesses in Eulalia. If it weren't for the fact that Hephaestus wasn't there at the time, it wouldn't be as simple as being deceived. Of course not. Noah is definitely a good boy. Hestia was a little dissatisfied. No matter what, I'm still a god. I still have a good eye for people, right? That's true. Hephaestus loosened her frown. Since you said so yourself, then remember to take responsibility. Don't forget, that child will be your family in the future. Don't give him any trouble. I know, Hestia muttered. She turned her head and waved at Noah. Come on, Noah, Hestia muttered to herself before putting on a cheerful expression. Noah, come here quickly. Noah, who was looking at the equipment in the shop, came back to his senses and walked toward Hestia and Hephaestus. Hephaestus sized up Noah and nodded to Noah. Your name is Noah, right? Noah Doria. That's my full name. Noah also quietly observed Hephaestus, and then asked the question he was concerned about. Did you, the god of smithing, make all the equipment here? Of course not, Hephaestus answered without any hesitation. The equipment here are all the works of the children in my clan tribe. Noah finally understood. While Hestia and Hephaestus were talking, Noah had been looking at the equipment in the shop. Hestia had said that Hephaestus' family was one of the best smithing families in the world. Very few people in the world could surpass the products under her clan. In addition, the main god of the clan was Hephaestus, the god of forging. It was not strange that Noah would be interested in the equipment here. But how should he put it? Although the equipment here could be said to be excellent, it was not enough for Noah. After all, Noah had almost all the relics in the mid-moon world since ancient times. In terms of sharpness and precision, these equipment might be comparable to relics. However, the real power of relics lay in the endless variety of powerful abilities and effects. The equipment in Hephaestus' shop almost did not have the kind of unique abilities and effects that could be used as trump cards. There were only support effects that were similar to increasing basic abilities, increasing lethality, increasing resistance to heat, cold and poison. Compared to relics, it was indeed not enough. If the equipment made by the famous heavenly realm divine blacksmith Hephaestus was like this, then Noah would be really disappointed. Therefore, in this shop, there was only one piece of equipment that could attract Noah's interest. It was a weapon that was placed alone in a glass cabinet in the shop. It looked like a small knife, but the body of the sword seemed to be burning. Noah felt a wave of magic from the weapon that seemed to be burning. It should not be an ordinary weapon that was only outstanding in sharpness and precision, right? Then Noah pointed at the small knife. What kind of weapon is that? Hephaestus and Hephaestus looked over at the same time, and then looked at each other. That's a magic sword, Hephaestus explained. To put it simply, it's a weapon that has the ability to release magic. It doesn't require chanting or any conditions to use it. It only takes a thought to use the magic attached to the weapon. That's the kind of weapon. Hearing that, Noah understood. Wasn't that the same weapon as the magical weapon in fairy tale? Unfortunately, that was not the case. That's not as convenient a weapon as you think, Hephaestus, who had been observing Noah, said. Although it can release magic, the magic attached to it is not as powerful as the original. Also, there's the number of times it can be used. Once the number of times it can be used is used up, it will break. So, that's just a good replacement. Noah suddenly lost interest. Not only was the power not as powerful as the original, but there was also the number of times it could be used. That was not even a magical weapon, right? You're planning to become an adventurer, right? Hephaestus smiled. Then, I'm looking forward to when you can patronize my shop. Noah smiled bitterly and nodded, although he did not like it. Chapter 836. The sky gradually became brighter. The sun had not yet risen from the east and floated in the sky, but there were already some light screens in the sky, telling people that dawn had arrived. The clear and loud sound of birds echoed in the sky. The dewdrops on the leaves slowly fell, flickering with fluorescent light. Only in the morning, there was a trace of fresh cold air between heaven and earth, enveloping the perfect circular city. May City Eulalie. In the era before the gods came, people called it the ancient era, and it had existed until now. It had been one of the most famous metropolises in the world. The reason why this metropolis was famous was very simple. It was because it was the only May city in the world. Only in this metropolis there was an underground city, which attracted adventurers from all over the world. It was known as the center of the world. This was Eulalie. In the city surrounded by high city walls, the outer part of the city was mainly tall towers and high-rise buildings. The closer to the center, the lower the height of the buildings. In the center of this vast city, there was a gigantic tower that reached the sky. It was entirely white and gray in color. Looking around Eulalie, or even the whole world, it was possible to find a taller building than this. It was a skyscraper, known as the Tower of Babel. Eulalie owned the underground city. Because of this characteristic, there were more adventurers gathered here than in any other city or country. The underground city was the source of the fierce monsters scattered across the whole continent. It was the only place in the world that could produce a species known as monsters. Before the gods came, people who had not received the grace of the gods had not suppressed the underground maze, and the monsters from the underground city could invade the surface unscrupulously. Later, even with the help of the grace of the gods, people were able to suppress the underground city in this era, but the monsters that had invaded the surface had not been eliminated. Therefore, the monsters that had invaded the surface reproduced on the surface and gave birth to offspring. So there were traces of monsters all over the world except the underground city. In order to prevent the same thing from happening, Eulalie's people built the Tower of Babel and covered the entrance of the underground city as a cover to prevent monsters from invading the surface. Under such circumstances, if Eulalie's adventurers wanted to explore the dungeon, they would have to enter the Tower of Babel. Since the Tower of Babel was in the center of Eulalie, and Eulalie had 8 streets radiating from the center, the Tower of Babel naturally converged the entrances and exits of the 8 streets of Eulalie. Therefore, no matter which street they took, they would eventually reach the Tower of Babel. To be precise, they arrived at the central square, where the 8 main streets gathered around the Tower of Babel. At this time, Noah was in the central square, holding a book in his hand. He was walking towards the Tower of Babel, while reading it silently. It was a book that recorded all sorts of information about the dungeon. As a newcomer to the dungeon, the guild would usually assign a staff member to be the newcomer's consultant and provide all sorts of help for the exploration of the dungeon. However, because of the sudden appearance of Loki, although Hasti had helped Noah with the procedures, she had forgotten about the consultant. In the morning, when Noah decided to go to the dungeon to have a look, Hasti had also suggested that Noah go to the guild headquarters to find a consultant. Noah felt that it was not necessary. Therefore, after buying a book with information about the dungeon from the bookstore yesterday, Noah went to the Tower of Babel while reading. It was daybreak, and the sun had not completely risen. However, the adventurers from the 8 streets had begun to come here sparsely. They entered the Tower of Babel and went to explore the underground city. Although Noah was reading a book, he could clearly feel that the adventurers around him were pointing and whispering about him. After all, Noah was wanted by Loki's family. The bounty had been spread throughout Eulalia, and many people knew about Noah. Fortunately, the reason for Noah's bounty was not recorded in the bounty. Otherwise, it would not be just a matter of being pointed at by others. After gaining a general understanding of the dungeon, Noah closed the book in his hand. In short, the dungeon doesn't only have one level. There are many levels. The higher the level, the stronger the monsters that come out of the dungeon. Am I right? Of course, the dungeon was not that simple. There were more or less other matters, some of which were very important and would be mentioned in the future. For now, Noah only wanted to see what the dungeon was like. Just as Noah was about to walk to the entrance of the Tower of Babel, Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped in midair. With his excellent sensing ability, Noah could clearly feel it. At this moment, a line of sight fell from the sky and was projected on Noah as if it was looking down on him. Originally, it was just a line of sight that carried a hint of scrutiny like the surrounding people. However, for some reason, the line of sight suddenly trembled and turned into magma that was comparable to that of a volcano. If there was a word to describe it, it would be scorching. It was really scorching. It was so scorching that Noah even had a feeling that the owner of the line of sight would go crazy at any time and completely devour him. Noah did not feel such a scorching and almost thirsty gaze from Mira and Lisanna. Mira and Lisanna also looked at Noah with a burning gaze, but that kind of passion was quite heartwarming. The scorching gaze was not only heartwarming, but it was also enough to make Noah burn. Such a blatant scorching gaze made Noah very uncomfortable. He followed the line of sight and raised his head to look at the towering Tower of Babel. It was projected from the Tower of Babel. However, just as Noah raised his head, the line of sight suddenly disappeared without any warning. At this moment, Noah actually felt a sense of relief, as if he had been liberated from a furnace. However, Noah's brows were knitted tighter and tighter. Who is that? Naturally, no one would answer Noah's question. Noah could only stare at the towering Tower of Babel for a long time before he lowered his head as if he had given up. It seems that I really can't live in peace in this world. After saying this, Noah lifted his feet and walked into the Tower of Babel without looking back. For the time being, Noah did not know that the Tower of Babel in front of him had other functions besides being the cover of the dungeon. One of them was that there were powerful gods with the power of the clan tribe living on the top floor of the tower. That sudden, abnormally scorching gaze came from the top floor of the tall tower that reached the clouds. On the top floor of the Tower of Babel, in a luxurious hall, a goddess suddenly let out a soft groan and sat down on the ground. She lowered her head and trembled all over. Her face was extremely red, and she was gasping for breath. "Your Excellency?" At the door of the luxurious room, a burly man looked at the goddess who suddenly sat down on the ground. His firm face changed slightly, and he was about to step forward, but he was stopped. The goddess continued to lower her head and tremble. She struggled to speak in a painful voice. "I'm fine." After saying this, the goddess slowly raised her blushing pretty face. There was no sign of pain on her pretty face. There was only endless joy in his heart. How could? The goddess's voice was full of intoxication. "Just one look, and I." The goddess clenched her legs tightly and endured the extreme pleasure. Through the window, the goddess looked at the central square in front of the Tower of Babel. There, the man who made the goddess lose her composure had entered the dungeon. In response, the goddess only spoke with a tone that was faintly tinged with madness. "He is definitely mine, definitely." Chapter 837. Since it was an underground city and a maze, it naturally gave people a feeling of complexity and darkness. In fact, the complexity depended on the situation, but it was not necessarily dark. The dungeon was divided into levels. The higher the level, the further it was from the ground, and the stronger the monsters that were born on that level. With a fixed level as the boundary, the topography and nature of the dungeon would be different. When Noah entered the dungeon and arrived at the first level, a maze that looked like a tunnel appeared in front of him. The walls were light blue, and there were no gaps around them. The walls were completely made of rocks, but there was an inexplicable light source that lit up every passage. The adventurers who came from the Tower of Babel walked leisurely into the passages and disappeared from Noah's sight. When entering the dungeon, no matter which level one wanted to reach, one had to walk step by step. Therefore, even the high-level adventurers had to go through the stairs from the first level to the second level, and then from the second level to the third level. They had to keep going down step by step. Therefore, the first level of the dungeon was the safest place. That was not only because the monsters there were the weakest and lowest level, but also because there were many adventurers who went down from the first level. Any monsters would be killed, and there would not be a situation where a large number of monsters would attack at the same time. This was not a good thing for Noah. If possible, I don't want to find a single monster to test my skills. Noah laughed and shook his head as he said these words that seemed to be said by a veteran gamer. He walked into a passage with few people. Although the topography of the dungeon was not fixed on every level, it would not change its shape suddenly. At least, in the book that Noah bought, there was a map of the first 10 levels of the dungeon. Following the map in his memory, Noah walked towards the entrance to the second level, while observing his surroundings. Pa! All of a sudden, the wall that Noah was looking at suddenly made a crisp cracking sound, and it slowly cracked open. Noah stopped and looked at the cracked wall. There, a goblin monster was letting out inaudible howls. It was like a chick that had just hatched from an egg. It kept struggling and popping out of the ground. This was the underground city. The dungeon was alive. This was something that everyone knew. Of course, the so-called life didn't mean that the dungeon would attack people on its own, or that the terrain of each floor would change from time to time. It meant something else. For example, the underground city would automatically repair itself. If there was a damaged structure, the damaged structure would be restored to its original state in a short while. The monster was born from this living labyrinth. Just like how chicks and birds were hatched, monsters would be born from the maze's walls, floor, ceiling, and even other places. Because of this, no matter how many monsters were defeated, the monsters in the dungeon would not be wiped out. The types of monsters that were born on each floor were fixed. Sometimes, some monsters would climb up from the lower floors or climb down from the upper floors. Basically, the types of monsters that appeared on each floor were fixed, and it was rare for similar situations to occur. Now Noah was looking at the scene of monsters being born in the dungeon. Gee! The goblin let out an unpleasant cry like a duck that was being strangled. The goblin that crawled out of the wall was like a flea. It landed on all fours on the ground and pounced in Noah's direction. Facing the pouncing goblin, Noah raised his eyebrows and remained motionless. When the goblin was in front of him, he clenched his fist and swung it. The back of his fist landed heavily on the side of the goblin's face. Palm! With a muffled sound, the thin goblin was sent flying and crashed into the wall. Its head tilted, and the light in its eyes dimmed. Palm! Immediately after, the goblin's body rapidly lost its color. With a muffled explosion, it turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared without a trace. Then, a piece of blue crystal-like gravel and a sharp nail fell to the ground. This was the fate of the defeated monsters. The defeated monsters would not leave behind any corpses. They would only leave behind a crystal called a magic stone. It was the core that existed in the monster's body. It was said that the reason why these monsters could move and have life was because of the magic stone in their bodies. This magic stone contained incredible power and could be used to make various magic stone products. There were no electric lights in this world. However, using the power of the magic stone, people could make it into a lamp and make it have the same effect as an electric light. using human technology to process and use it flexibly in various aspects to create magic stone products. These magic stones were the reason why this seemingly backward era was not at all behind the modern era in terms of convenience. These magic stones were the reason why this era was not at all behind the modern era. For example, the ignition device that had the same function as a gas stove, the freezer that could store food like a refrigerator, and so on were all magic stone products made with magic stones. Therefore, magic stones were regarded as a precious resource. Eulalie exported these magic stone products to other countries, and the guild that managed Eulalie obtained huge benefits. Therefore, adventurers could exchange magic stones obtained in the dungeon for money in the guild. The guild would determine the purchase price according to the size of the magic stone. Of course, the magic stones dropped by the monsters on level 1 would not be large. It could be said that they were pitifully small. As for the fingernails, they were the so-called dropped items. In addition to dropping magic stones, the defeated monsters would sometimes leave behind a part of their original body. It was said that the part of the monster's body was abnormally developed. It had the power to exist independently after losing the magic stone. It could be used as a material to make weapons or armor. Basically, it was more valuable than magic stones. If the defeated monsters would definitely drop magic stones, but the size of the magic stones varied according to the strength of the monster, then dropped items could only be obtained if one was lucky. The first monster that I killed dropped an item? Is this the effect of the world's protection skill? Noah laughed bitterly. Why do I feel like I'm playing a game? By fighting monsters, Noah could gain experience points. Through Hestia's grace, Noah could draw out the possibilities in his body, allowing him to grow and level up. After defeating the monsters, Noah could obtain the dropped items from the monsters. Was this not a game? It was a pity that once he died, he would not be able to revive. The monsters on level 1 are too weak, Noah thought to himself. If I want to train my ability points, it's more efficient to go further down. Noah didn't even pick up the magic stones and fingernail-shaped items. Instead, he headed straight for the passageway leading to the second floor. To Noah, the magic stones and the dropped items could only be exchanged for a pitiful amount of money. He would rather not pick them up. Just like that, Noah followed the map in his memory and walked to the stairs leading to level 2. He entered level 3 through the stairs leading to level 3, and continued to walk downwards. If others knew that a new adventurer on his first day in the dungeon had reached level 3, they would definitely be shocked to death. But Noah wasn't satisfied. He avoided the weak monsters and went to the last level of the dungeon map that was recorded in a book that was sold publicly. Level 10. It was no longer a dull tunnel. The walls were covered with moss, and the ground was covered with short grass. It was like a grassland, and there was a phosphorescent light like the sun. However, it was filled with a thick white fog. Standing at the entrance of this level, Noah gazed ahead. Paw-caw. Paw-caw, paw-caw. Many ferocious half-orcs who were larger than humans and had pig heads and chubby bodies broke out of the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah laughed. Very good. That's why it's worth training. Chapter 838. Underground City, 9th floor. On one of the paths leading to the 10th floor, a group of people were chatting as they walked forward. It was a small team of 5 people. Although there were only 5 of them, these 5 people were well-known figures in Eulalia, and even the adventurers of the entire world. Among them, there were 3 that Noah knew who came to this world yesterday. A pair of Amazon sisters with wheat-colored skin wearing rather revealing clothes. She was a beautiful young girl with a head of shiny golden hair and a pitiful appearance. They were none other than Ace, Tiona, and Tiona of the Loki clan. In addition to A's group of 3, the other 2 people were a stark contrast. One was a rather petite homunculus. The other was a very tall elf. Without a doubt, all 5 of them were from Loki's clan. Moreover, they were the well-deserved leaders of Loki's clan. On the way to the 10th floor, Tiona looked bored. Hey Finn, how long will it take to reach the 18th floor? Safe floor. It was a very rare floor in the underground city that didn't produce monsters. No matter which floor they wanted to reach, they had to walk on the ground. The lower the floor, the more time they would need to spend to reach it. Therefore, when high-level adventurers entered the underground city, they generally needed to stay for at least a day. Sometimes it wasn't strange to stay for 1 or 2 months. Under such circumstances, the safe floor was very useful. At least, high-level adventurers could not only have a good rest, but also have a place to store their items. They wouldn't have to carry them around all the time. Therefore, many high-level adventurers who aimed at the lower floors would use the safe floor as a stronghold. The 18th floor was the first safe floor in the underground city. How can it be so fast? We just entered the underground city for a while, right? The one that Tiona called Finn was the homunculus. Finn answered patiently after hearing Tiona's words. Even if it's us, we still need to walk for a long time to reach the 18th floor. I say, Tiona, you've been down there so many times. Don't you know this? Tiona said angrily. So, don't keep complaining to the leader. You're annoying. Tiona is annoying. Tiona wrinkled her nose and hugged Ace, who was walking silently beside her. Ace, chat with me. Chat. Ace showed a puzzled and vexed expression. Tiona, don't make things difficult for AIC. The tall and slender elven beauty spoke. You know that Ace isn't the kind of person who's good at chatting. You're just causing trouble for her. What's the matter, Riveria? Tiona complained. Ever since she met that interesting little brother, AIC has been in a daze whenever she's free. She doesn't even bother to talk to me. Hearing this, AIC lowered her head and spoke in a mosquito-like voice. I'm sorry. Don't bother with this unreasonable fool, Ace. Tiona sighed. She'll only cause trouble for you. However, AIC has indeed been in a daze ever since she came back yesterday. She even forgot about the morning exercises that she had been doing. That's really strange, Finn said with some interest. In the past, if we ignored Ace, she would go into the underground city alone. Today we invited her over. This is rare. Is this related to the person who forced Ace to leave without receiving any favor? Compared to going into the underground city without saying a word, I'm more willing to see you being troubled like an ordinary child, Riveria said. But you can't continue like this, Ace. Soon, we'll have to go into the underground city. When that time comes, we might lose many of our companions if you're in a daze. I know, Ace replied softly, but she still looked disappointed. I'm really starting to get curious. Finn smiled. What kind of man is he that can make AIC daydream all day long? After saying that, the entrance to the 10th floor appeared in front of them. As soon as they entered the 10th floor, which was completely different from the 9th floor, AIC and the rest suddenly heard a strange sound. It was filled with a thick fog and didn't feel like a gloomy underground passage. Roar! An extremely loud beast-like roar reverberated throughout the entire space. Rumble! Along with the resonant roar, the ground began to tremble slightly. Immediately after, the whistling, roaring, and vibrating sounds all mixed together, fluctuating like an echo in this space filled with dense fog. Tiona was energized as though she had finally encountered something interesting in her boredom. What's that sound? Don't shout. Idiot. Tiona glared at Tiona and turned to Finn. Leader, is there a battle ahead? It should be. Finn nodded. But as far as the battle is concerned, this movement is a bit too much. Should we go and take a look? Riveria seemed to be a little concerned. I feel that the ground is shaking very frequently as if... It's like there's an army of giant monsters charging at us, right? Finn showed a smile that matched his appearance. Very well, I smell something unusual. My entire index finger is shaking. If we don't go and take a look, we won't have the face to call ourselves adventurers. After that, Finn took the lead and walked in the direction of the sound. As the sound got closer and closer, about 10 minutes later, the group of Rockies led by Finn stopped and looked ahead, falling into a state of astonishment. Roar. Amidst the chaotic roars, a group of huge, fat half-orcs, who were 2 to 3 meters tall, held clubs in their hands. There were at least a few hundred of them, and they charged toward the center with ferocious expressions. There, a figure was surrounded by hundreds of orcs, but he was so calm as though he was taking a stroll. Sometimes he stepped to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the back, sometimes to the front, 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 sometimes to the back, and sometimes to the back, bending down, and dodging the attacks of the sticks in extremely thrilling angles. It was such a leisurely stroll that the hundreds of gigantic orcs couldn't touch a single strand of hair. As a result, the orcs howled repeatedly, their howls filled with ferocity and violence. That scene was enough to make everyone's eyeballs pop out. It didn't look like a battle at all. It looked more like a performance. Yes, a performance. That person who was surrounded by orcs was showing amazing skills that ordinary people couldn't reach. From time to time he would take the opportunity to punch the stomach of the attacking half-orc, sending the huge monster flying. Sometimes he would twist his body to dodge, letting the whistling sticks graze his skin and pass by in thrilling fashion. Sometimes he would move slightly, and his entire body was like a soft cloud, getting into a position where the orcs couldn't attack at all. Sometimes he would charge left and right, shaking the clumsy orcs into dizziness with amazing speed. Some even knocked into each other and fell down powerlessly. If this wasn't a performance, then what was? You're lying, right? Tyagni cried out in alarm. Facing hundreds of orcs, even if they are only equivalent to LV1 monsters, he can still play with them like this. Could it be that he is a LV5 adventurer? Where would a LV5 adventurer have the time to play with orcs here? Riveria frowned. Who is that person? AIC, on the other hand, stared at the figure. Suddenly, her eyes widened and ripples appeared in her eyes. It's him. Chapter 839. Roar. Amidst the continuous beast-like roars, the gigantic monsters clenched their clubs and madly charged towards the figure in the middle who was surrounded by the monsters. As time passed, the number of monsters surrounding the figure gradually approached 1,000. Looking at this scene, the group of first-level adventurers of the Loki clan, who could be ranked in the whole world, fell into a state of speechlessness. Besieged by thousands of monsters. That was a scene that was difficult to appear even in the depths of dozens of floors in the dungeon. On the 10th floor, although it was not impossible for monsters to surround and attack, the number of monsters would at most be around 10 to 20. Besieged by thousands of monsters? That was no longer a difficulty that could appear in the 10th floor of the dungeon. The dungeon's floors were divided according to the difficulty, which was also divided into upper, middle, lower, and deep levels. The upper floors were 1 to 12. The middle floors were 13 to 24. The lower floors were 25 to 36. The deep levels were the floors below the 37th floor. At present, the development area of the dungeon was up to the 58th floor. In other words, the area below the 58th floor had not been reached by any adventurers or even any clan. In summary, the difficulty of the dungeon, which was divided into upper, middle, lower, and deep levels, would have a big leap at every stage. If the upper level was the difficulty of LV1 adventurers who could explore alone, then, in the middle level, if they still wanted to explore alone, they had to at least reach LV2 to have a little guarantee. That's right. It was just a little guarantee. Therefore, even if they reached LV2, adventurers would choose to team up instead of exploring alone. The difference was that big. Then, what was the difficulty of being besieged by thousands of orcs? Conservatively speaking, I'm afraid that such a difficulty might not appear in the middle level. Only the lower level can be matched, right? Riveria's face was solemn. Although in terms of strength, the half-orc is only classified as a LV1 monster, its strength is extremely great. Even a LV2 monster can't completely withstand a blow. Its weakness is that its movements are slow and clumsy. Otherwise, it would be a genuine LV2 monster. And being besieged by thousands of such monsters and still being able to deal with it, it's really amazing. Tyagni's face was full of doubts. But why are there so many monsters in the upper level? Facing Tyagni's question, Finn, who had been observing the figure besieged by the monster army, spoke. That should be the effect of some kind of item, right? Item? Tyagni and Riveria were slightly startled. Look carefully around that person. Finn pointed his mouth to the figure in the monster army. Because it's overlapping with the surrounding fog, it's a bit difficult to find. Hearing Finn's words, everyone, including AIC, gazed at the figure who was surrounded by the monster army seriously. After a while, they indeed saw it. Around the figure, there was a strange gas that looked like smoke, but also like ashes slowly rising. Tyagni's nose twitched slightly. There's a very nice smell. So that's how it is, using that strange smell to attract all the monsters? Riveria frowned. But even so, there shouldn't be thousands of monsters, right? I didn't quite understand it at first, but now I finally understand. Finn suddenly smiled, but his eyes flashed with light. That person didn't kill the besieging monsters at all. He just blindly attracted them. Hearing that, the group of girls opened their eyes wide. After being reminded by Finn, even if they didn't realize it, it was impossible. The monsters that were sent flying by the figure's occasional punches didn't die. Instead, after crashing to the ground, they became even more enraged and joined the army of monsters that were continuously attracted from the surroundings. They continued to charge towards the figure. Instead of killing the monsters, he kept attracting them. So, it was only a matter of time before the number of monsters reached thousands. Why? Tyagni asked in surprise. Why didn't that person kill the monsters? That's because his goal isn't to obtain magic stones and dropped items, nor is it to kill monsters and gain experience points. Instead, it's to train his basic abilities. Finn stared at the figure that was drowned by the army of monsters. Under the siege of such an army, that person would occasionally launch attacks, sometimes letting the monster's attacks graze his skin, sometimes twisting his body and sneaking into the monster's blind spots, sometimes scampering back and forth at an astonishing speed, but he didn't kill the monsters. It's obvious that he is training his skills or basic ability, but since that person can move around with ease in such an army, it proves that his skills haven't reached the limit yet, so he can't be training his skills, he can only be training his basic ability. The group of girls instantly fell into silence. Strength, durability, dexterity, agility, and magic. The basic ability points were divided into these 5 categories. If one wanted to increase one's ability point, they would have to use that ability point frequently. If one wanted to increase one's strength, they would have to exert force. If one wanted to increase one's durability, they would have to endure attacks. If one wanted to increase one's dexterity, they would have to move their body. If one wanted to increase one's dexterity, they would have to run with all their might. If one wanted to increase one's magic, they would have to use magic. The figure that attacked and dodged in the army of thousands of monsters was undoubtedly using the monsters around him to train his basic ability point. The occasional punch was to increase one's strength. Letting the monster's attacks graze his skin was to increase one's durability without taking any damage. Twisting his body and sneaking into the monster's blind spots was to increase one's dexterity. Scampering back and forth at an astonishing speed was to increase one's dexterity. Other than the magic ability point that required magic, the rest of the basic abilities were being trained to an astonishing degree. After all, it was being carried out in an army of thousands of monsters. One could only imagine how terrifying the frequency of usage was. More importantly, under such circumstances, that person still seemed to be at ease. There was not even a trace of damage. With this kind of ability, how could one not be stunned by it? AIC's eyes sparkled even more after hearing Finn's explanation. And Noah, who was surrounded by the army of monsters, had already noticed that someone was watching from the side. In order to not attract attention, I purposely chose such a remote place to release the scent of return, to attract the monsters. In the end, I still can't avoid it? Noah, who was running back and forth leisurely in the army of monsters, had a helpless look on his face. Well, it's no wonder that I attracted thousands of monsters. At this point, it's impossible to cover up my movements. While muttering to himself, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up. Then let's deal with this wave first. After saying that, Noah suddenly stopped his footsteps and straightened his back. Did I end the next moment? Dazzling magic circles hovered around Noah's body and spun out. They were like precise geometric patterns that were imprinted in the air, blooming with dazzling light. Immediately, huge light beams that seemed to connect heaven and earth burst out from the dazzling magic circles, instantly drowning the army of monsters that surrounded them. Dong! A deafening sound and a burst of scorching flames suddenly gushed out from the center of the army of monsters, accompanied by a shocking impact, surging in all directions, causing the ground to tremble. Wah! The sudden violent energy caused AIC and the rest to be shocked. Immediately after, they were met with the impact of the wind wave, causing everyone present to subconsciously raise their arms to block in front of their bodies. They stabilized their bodies and barely avoided the fate of being blown away. As for the monsters that were drowned by the magic light beams, they were annihilated one by the blinding light, leaving behind a ground full of magic stones and dropped items. One hit, all annihilated. Chapter 840. Whoosh! The howling wind turned into a substantial shockwave that spread out in all directions along with the blazing flames. Under the substantial shockwave, the dense fog that pervaded the entire 10th basement floor was blown away, revealing an unprecedented clear scenery on this floor that was shrouded in fog all day long. After an unknown amount of time, the howling wind finally calmed down, and the fog slowly became dense again. Standing in the distance, the adventurers of the Loki clan who were lucky enough not to be blown away spread out their arms and looked forward with trepidation. In front of them, the massive army of monsters had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a ground full of magic stones and dropped items. In the center of the ground full of magic stones and dropped items, the beautiful magic circles around Noah dimmed one by one as if nothing had happened. Who would have thought that just a moment ago, that figure was facing the charge of an army of thousands of monsters? The smile on Finn's face became a little forced. Hey Riveria, if it's you, it shouldn't be difficult to do the same thing, right? If I can successfully use magic, it's indeed not difficult. Riveria gazed forward and smiled bitterly after a while. But if I want to use magic of that level, I have to chant for a long time. Why? Tyagni asked with a bewildered expression. Why doesn't his magic require chanting? Magic that doesn't require chanting? AIC stared blankly at Noah, who was standing in the middle of the ground full of magic stones and dropped items. Then Tioni exclaimed in surprise. Isn't he that interesting little brother? Finally, Tioni also discovered the true identity of the person who was practicing his basic abilities with ease in the midst of the army of monsters. Tyagni was startled as well. It's really him. What do you mean, interesting little brother? Riveria was surprised. Isn't that the person you mentioned who joined Hastia's clan and forced AIC to retreat before receiving the favor? It's him. Tioni excitedly waved at Noah's direction. Little brother, we're here. Looking at the row of Loki's clan led by Finn, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Yesterday, Noah asked a little about Loki's clan from Hasti and finally understood what kind of people those girls who had been pestering him before were. Naturally, he also recognized Finn and Riveria. In Eulalie, adventurers were divided into two categories. One was the low-level adventurers. They were LV1 adventurers. More than half of Eulalie's adventurers were at this level. Therefore, LV1 adventurers and LV2 adventurers had a veritable high wall, and the treatment was also very different. If you want to reach LV2, you must have enough aptitude to achieve it. As a result, more than 50% of the adventurers were rejected by this high wall. The second category of adventurers was the high-level adventurers. That was LV2 and above, adventurers with backbone strength. High-level adventurers had the qualifications to be given a title by the gods. High-level adventurers were subdivided into third-level adventurers, second-level adventurers, and first-level adventurers. Third-level adventurers were LV2 adventurers. Second-level adventurers were LV3 and 4 adventurers. First-level adventurers were LV5 and above. The 5 people in front of him were the rare first-level adventurers in Eulalie. Findanner, the leader of Loki's clan, the figure who commanded the entire Loki's clan. He was the most authoritative existence in Loki's clan except for the main god Loki. His level was as high as LV6, and his title was Brave. Riveria Lysalvi, the deputy leader of Loki's clan, was the royal blood of the elves, and was also the strongest mage in Eulalie. Her level was as high as LV6, and her title was 9 Devil Concubine. Tiona Ziliuti, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan, Amazon race LV5, and her title was Great Cut. Tiona Ziliuti, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan, Amazon race LV5, and her title was Angry Snake. As for the last AIC, although Noah had expected that she was not simple, he still did not expect that this girl was better than he imagined. AIC Wallenstein, a first-level adventurer belonging to Loki's clan. She was also as high as LV5, but she was known as the most dazzling figure in the entire Loki's clan. Although her level was not as high as Finn and Riveria, who were the leader and deputy leader of Loki's clan, AIC was known as the strongest swordswoman in the maze city of Eulalie. Coupled with her beauty that was not inferior to the goddesses from heaven, she was the object that all the men in Eulalie yearned for. In addition, this girl had repeatedly achieved brilliant results in the strategy of the underground city. When the gods and adventurers of the same profession mentioned the topic of the underground city, they would always mention this girl's name. Moreover, this girl was only 8 years old. When she was still a little girl, it only took her a year to upgrade from LV1 to LV2. She set the record for the shortest time and the fastest speed among all the people who reached LV2 in the world. Because of her exquisite sword skills, she was called Swordswoman. Because of her frightening battle record, she was given the nickname Warrior Concubine. To put it bluntly, in terms of strength alone, the gods all believed that this girl was the strongest among the same level. This was a great honor. After all, in the entire Eulalie, the highest level was LV7, and there was only one person who had reached that level. And the number of existences that could reach LV6 could be counted with one hand. Under such circumstances, to be known as the strongest existence in LV5, one could imagine how powerful AIC's strength was. Therefore, when they learned that AIC was forced to retreat by ordinary people who did not receive the favor, Hestia and others were so surprised. Knowing that the girls who were entangled with him actually had such a big background, how could Noah not be speechless? Moreover, yesterday they were entangled several times, and today they met again. What an ill-fated relationship. Noah rolled his eyes. Why is it you guys again? Tiona and Tioni also seemed to feel that they were very fated with Noah. They looked at each other, and then they laughed out loud. Under the lead of Finn, the group of Loki's family all came in front of Noah. You are the person who Loki did not hesitate to put a bounty on in order to dig into our family, right? Finn smiled at Noah. Although I have heard a lot about you from Tiona and Tioni, I only know how powerful you are after seeing you with my own eyes. No wonder AIC has been thinking about you. As soon as these words fell, AIC, who was silently following behind, turned her head and looked at Finn. Although she did not speak, and her face was still expressionless, it gave people a don't say strange things atmosphere, which made Tiona, Tioni, and Riveria a little unable to help but laugh. However, with your ability, you should be able to go further down, right? Finn asked doubtfully. Why are you staying on the 10th floor? My purpose is not to earn magic stones and items. I just want to train my basic ability and try it out. Adhering to the principle of not hitting a smiling face, Noah replied helplessly. Besides, I don't have the map of the floors below. In order not to get lost, I just stayed on the 10th floor to train myself. In that case, do you want to go to the 18th floor with us? Finn invited with some enthusiasm. I still want to have a good chat with you. Maybe next time. Noah smiled and refused. Today, I just want to practice. Then I won't force you. Finn reached out his hand to Noah without any disappointment. Let's have a good chat when we have the chance. Sure. Noah also reached out his hand and shook Finn's hand slightly. Then we will leave first. Finn turned around. Okay, let's go. The wheat-skinned Amazon sisters waved at Noah. Goodbye, little brother. It seems that we are quite fated. Let's have a good chat next time. My apologies. Riveria slowly lowered her head as a form of salute before turning around. Only AIC was left. After staring at Noah for a while, she spoke softly. See you next time. Finn and the others looked at AIC in surprise, as if they were very surprised that AIC would say, see you next time, to an outsider. AIC actually blushed for a moment. She immediately turned around and left. Finn and the others looked at each other and smiled before following her. Looking at the slowly leaving Eulalie's famous group of adventurers, Noah shook his head. This is another level of entanglement, right? Chapter 841. The sun rose from the east and set in the west, and the day passed quickly. The bird slowly flew towards the direction of the forest. The sky gradually darkened. The clouds were dyed a gorgeous crimson, and dusk enveloped the bustling labyrinth city. It was a sign that the day was coming to an end. At this time, most of the adventurers in the dungeon had returned, and the entrance of the Tower of Babel was bustling with activity. Since there was only one entrance to the dungeon, the adventurers who returned from the dungeon would naturally join the other adventurers and leave together. Surprisingly, Noah was also among them. Perhaps it was because they had been fighting in the dungeon for a whole day that they could finally relax. In the central square of the Tower of Babel, the adventurers who came out of the dungeon were all clamoring and making noises. Noah, who was walking among them, was receiving the attention of the surrounding adventurers. Some of them even sneered at him. Is that the man who was wanted by Loki's family yesterday? I wonder what he did to be wanted by Loki's family. I thought he was someone great, but it seems like he's just a rookie. Really, he doesn't even have a piece of decent equipment. Indeed, compared to the adventurers who were more or less equipped, Noah was very shabby. That was because Noah did not have a single weapon on him. He was even wearing the ordinary clothes that were warm in winter and cool in summer. Entering the dungeon required risking one's life, and very few adventurers would enter without any equipment. Even the rookies who had just entered the dungeon would wear some cloth clothes with some defensive properties. They would either carry a sword or a saber on their back. Only Noah was alone, and he did not look like he was going to the dungeon for an adventure. Instead, he looked like he was going for a stroll. Naturally, he would be mocked by the adventurers. It was a pity that if the adventurers knew that Noah wasn't wearing anything because he didn't need to be serious about the dungeon, and because he had a piece of dimensional storage equipment that could store any item, they wouldn't be able to laugh about it. After all, the adventurers had never even heard of spatial equipment or whatnot. Ignoring the adventurers who were acting like clowns, Noah walked out of the Tower of Babel and stopped. He turned his head and looked at the top of the Tower of Babel that he could not see the top of. In the morning, Noah had encountered the inexplicable burning gaze here. Who is it? Noah frowned slightly. I'll go back and try to ask Hestia. With this idea in mind, Noah lifted his feet again and walked towards one of the 8 streets that converged at the central square. West Street, not far from the central square of the Tower of Babel, there was an ordinary 2-story house that was neither too small nor too tall. Noah, who came from the central square, separated himself from the crowd and came to the side of the house. There was a doorstep in front of the house. It was not the kind of house that was built directly on the ground. Instead, it was built on a stone platform that was as tall as a person. Therefore, the door of the house was on the stone platform, and it was taller than the people walking on the street. One had to walk up the stone stairs on the side to get to the door. Noah walked up the stone stairs with his back facing the street that was about 1 or 2 meters shorter than him. He came to the door and knocked. Hestia, I'm back. As soon as he knocked on the door, a series of hurried footsteps came from inside the house. Soon the door was flung open. Hestia, who was still holding a book in her hand, welcomed Noah with the brightest expression. Her lovely face was full of joy. Welcome back, Noah. Although Hestia was not a dignified goddess in all aspects, it had to be said that she was very approachable. Being greeted by a cute goddess with a happy smile, anyone would be in a good mood, right? Anyway, Noah couldn't help but put on a smile. Yesterday, after leaving Hephaestus's place, Noah and Hestia found such a house and bought it with a large sum of money. The currency in this world was a kind of coin called Varus. That kind of coin was made of gold. Of course, every Varus was not a gold coin. How inconvenient would that be? Among the gold coins called Varus, There were smaller denominations of 100 varis and larger denominations of 1,000 varis. The value was different. For example, the house that Noah and Hestia lived in cost a lot of gold coins. Therefore, buying this house could be said to be a huge investment. At the very least, Noah bought it after smashing a gold brick that was bigger than a brick. Although it was just an ordinary house and was not very luxurious, it was enough for only Noah and Hestia to live in it. Today is your first time in the dungeon. Why did you stay for a whole day? While pulling Noah into the house, Hestia closed the door behind her and kept yelling at Noah. I'll be very worried if I stay here alone. Didn't I tell you that I'm just going to try my hand and understand the situation in the dungeon? At most, I'm going to train my basic abilities. I won't do anything else. Noah took off his knee-length coat and threw it on the sofa before sitting down. Besides, you said that with my abilities, if I can go back and forth in a day, I won't be able to go deep into the dungeon even if I want to. So, aren't you worried at all? In the end, I'm still worried, Hestia said as she puffed up her cheeks. This isn't the past. In the past, I only needed to hide in my room and read books. Now, even if I can hide at home and read books, my heart will still beat faster when I know that my child is in a dangerous place. That's not right. It's normal for my heart to beat faster. Or is it that the hearts of the gods in this world don't beat when there's nothing going on? Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but look at Hestia's chest, but he only saw a pair of abnormally full peaks. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he hurriedly shifted his gaze away. Anyway, I just honed my basic abilities on the 10th floor today. Other than that, I didn't do anything else. The 10th floor? Hestia looked a little hesitant. With your abilities, level 10 is very safe. But as an adventurer, I went straight to level 10 on my first day in the dungeon. If it weren't for you, I would have been scared silly. Is it okay? Level 10 is still the upper level, isn't it? Many LV1 adventurers have formed teams to go there, Noah said. Oh right, I also met those little girls from Loki's clan. I also saw Hero and GeoMOG. Loki's clan again? Hasn't Loki given up on poaching you? Hestia raised her eyebrows and placed her hands on the table in front of the sofa. Her face was less than 5 centimeters away from Noah as she stared at Noah fiercely. You weren't deceived, right? Am I right? You overreacted. Noah smiled wryly and pushed Hestia's face away. I just said hello. Really? Hestia stared at Noah through the gap between Noah's hands that were on her face. You can't lie to me. I said if I really wanted to join another clan tribe, I wouldn't have chosen to join yours in the first place, Noah said snappily. Your worries are unnecessary. Only then did Hestia smile like the sun had cleared up after the rain. She even called out in high spirits. Then let's upgrade our ability points. Hearing that, Noah nodded and looked forward to it. Although he had only tempered himself for a single day, Noah had fully utilized his strength to the fullest on that day. How much would this increase the proficiency of his basic abilities? Noah was more or less looking forward to this. At the very least, it would let Noah know how fast he could grow, right? Chapter 842. The house Noah and Hestia lived in was 2 stories high, but in fact it was only 1 story. It was just that this story was relatively spacious. After entering through the door, they arrived at the hall. In the hall, there was a kitchen, a bathroom, and a washroom. Facing the hall, there were 3 doors. They were Noah's and Hestia's rooms, and the last one was empty. At this time, in Hestia's room, Noah was lying on the soft bed with his arms bared. His back, which was engraved with a furnace and complicated dark characters, was exposed. After letting Noah lie on her bed, Hestia jumped on Noah's back and sat directly on top of Noah's body. Feeling the almost negligible weight and the wonderful touch, Noah rolled his eyes. Isn't this Lolita goddess giving out too many benefits? On the other hand, she didn't have any self-awareness at all. Instead, she took out a needle from somewhere. Noah, who saw this scene, frowned slightly. Hey Hestia, do I need to use divine blood as a medium every time I update my ability value? After the gods engraved the grace on the children of the lower realm, they could extract experience points from the children who had received their grace, and turn them into nourishment to draw out the possibilities within their bodies. However, this process needed to be carried out continuously. For example, although Noah had honed his basic abilities for a whole day in the dungeon, his ability value had not changed, and he himself had not been strengthened. Only when Hestia extracted the experience points from Noah's body and drew out the possibilities in his body, would Noah's ability value change, and his power would also be strengthened. This process was called updating ability value. Noah had thought that he would no longer need to use divine blood as a medium to update his ability value. But looking at Hestia's expression, it seemed that this was not the case. Of course, Hestia nodded. Only with God's blood as a medium will the sacred text, engraved on your body, have an effect. Otherwise, it will just be some ordinary text. Only with God's blood as a medium can we extract experience from your body, turn it into your nourishment, and change your growth. If that's the case, wouldn't I have to keep pricking my finger? Noah's frown deepened. Don't you feel any pain? Hestia was slightly startled, but she immediately revealed a gentle smile. She leaned over and leaned her body against Noah's body, her head also leaning against Noah's back, and closed her eyes. Noah is really a gentle and good child, but you don't have to worry. After all, I'm a god who has lived for who knows how many years. The pain of pricking my finger is much easier than being bitten by a mosquito. When I was in the heavenly realm, I even heard that there were gods who deliberately dug out their own hearts because they were too bored. The pain was so great that they almost died as a pastime. Noah's cold sweat almost dripped down. What were these gods doing in the heavenly realm? However, Noah could understand Hestia's words. For these eternal gods, perhaps pain was just a kind of experience? Well, then I won't say anything more, Noah said awkwardly. So hurry up and get up. How lacking was this god's self-awareness? Didn't she know that leaning her whole body on his back would lead to serious consequences? At the very least, Noah couldn't remain calm when he felt the full thing pressing against his back. I still want to rub against Noah's body. Although she said this, Hestia had already gotten up, and her puffed-up cheeks gradually disappeared. Then I'm going to start. After that, Hestia slightly pricked her finger with a needle, and a drop of blood oozed out from her finger. And indeed, just as Hestia said, she didn't even frown. She didn't feel any pain at all, and directly dripped the drop of blood from her hand onto the ground. Splash! The familiar sound of water falling into the water sounded. Clang! A faint blue light like a wave of water bloomed from the engraving on Noah's back. The sacred characters seemed to be endowed with life and jumped in the faint blue light. Hestia treated them as if they were treasures. Her fingers slid over the jumping black characters, and the sacred characters began to change. It didn't take long for a new ability value to appear in front of Hestia. Noah Dolelv. 1 power, I0, D528, durability, I0 D566, dexterity, I0 D545, agility, I0 D573 magic power, I0 F350, magic skill protection from the world permanent skill, equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. When Noah's new ability value appeared in front of Hestia in the most direct way, Hestia's pair of pupils trembled fiercely. Staring at the new ability value, Hestia repeatedly confirmed that there was no mistake. She couldn't help whispering, "Are you kidding me?" Hearing Hestia's voice, Noah, who was lying under Hestia, was puzzled. What's wrong? Only then did Hestia come back to her senses, but she couldn't say a word. Because Hestia really didn't know what to say. The proficiency increased by more than 2,500 points? This was something that had never happened before. Although Hestia hadn't engraved grace on other people, and she didn't know how much the proficiency of other people's basic abilities increased, she knew that this level of improvement was absolutely shocking. As for why, Hestia had heard more than once that the members of Hephaestus's clan complained that it was too difficult to increase their ability value. It was even difficult to increase the proficiency by more than 20 points at a time. And Hephaestus's ability value was only updated once every 1 or 2 weeks, or even once every 1 or 2 months. Noah's ability value had only been engraved yesterday, and was updated today. There was a gap of 1 day in between. However, the proficiency increased by more than 2,500 points. This was not normal. It was really not normal. Although Hestia thought that Noah's ability value should increase faster in the early stage, that was because she thought that with Noah's strength, he could kill a lot of monsters and accumulate experience points. However, when the strength of the opponent was equal to or stronger than the person, it was the easiest way to gain experience points, and it was easier to increase the proficiency of various basic abilities. Therefore, for people who were already strong, no matter how many weak monsters they defeated, it was not very helpful to increase their ability value. Otherwise, more than half of the adventurers couldn't cross the high wall from LV1 to LV2. Although Noah was only LV1, his strength was definitely above that. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to force Aeth, who was LV5, to retreat before receiving the grace. In such a case, even if a large number of monsters were killed, it would not accumulate to such an exaggerated extent. In this way, there was only one explanation. The possibility. Hestia's voice trembled slightly. The possibility hidden in his body, even if it is only a little, can reach such a terrible degree. The grace of God was originally used to draw out the possibility in the human body. Then, no matter how small the possibility of being drawn out was, if the possibility itself was extremely large, compared to others, the small possibility of being drawn out was still extremely large. Therefore, even if the possibility of Noah being drawn out was very small because of his strength, it was still many times larger than others. When she first met Noah, Hestia knew that she had found a treasure. Only now did Hestia realize how big this treasure was. She was so excited that she threw herself on Noah without hesitation. Wow. I love you so much, Noah. Didn't I tell you not to hug me so easily? Chapter 843. The total increase in proficiency is more than 2,500 points. Noah nodded as he read the ability value chart that Hestia had translated and copied down. Noah, who was new to the dungeon, did not know that other adventurers would not be able to increase their proficiency by more than 20 points in 1 or 2 weeks, or even 1 or 2 months. Noah did not feel anything about the increase in proficiency. Perhaps Hestia felt that the reason for such a terrifying growth was because of the possibility of Noah's body being in her body. In fact, part of the reason was that Noah had been training at an extremely high frequency all day. On this day, Noah honed his basic abilities in the midst of an astonishingly large army of terrifying monsters. Everyone knew that the more frequently a basic ability was used, the more proficiency it would increase. Therefore, after an entire day, Noah, who was in such an extreme state of training, naturally increased his proficiency in basic abilities at an extremely fast rate. In addition, whenever the monster army was about to pile up to the point where it could affect the actions of both sides, Noah would use the magic cannons to clear the area. As a result, he earned a lot of EXP, which he turned into nourishment for the improvement of his basic abilities. The combination of various factors allowed the proficiency of his basic abilities to increase at an astonishing rate. Of course, today was only a day of practice. To be honest, the monsters on the 10th level of the dungeon were too easy for Noah. If he could train in the middle, lower, or even deeper levels, his proficiency would only increase faster. There was no reason for it to slow down. At this rate, in 2 or 3 days, I should be able to reach S stage in all proficiency, right? Although it would be harder to increase the proficiency of his basic abilities at the later levels, Noah was only practicing on the 10th level. He would train in the deeper levels of the dungeon later, so his proficiency would not slow down. Therefore, Noah was confident that he could complete the upgrade to S stage in 2 to 3 days. Little did he know that Hestia was looking at Noah strangely when she heard that. Reaching S stage in all proficiency? Perhaps no one in the whole world had ever done that? After all, the further one progressed, the slower the rate of increase. By the time one reached S stage, it was basically impossible to increase one's proficiency. If one were to raise a single basic ability to S stage, there were quite a number of people who could do it. But to reach S stage in all proficiency? At least Hestia had never heard of such a thing. The difficulty was probably not even comparable to leveling up. Noah, who didn't notice the strange expression on Hestia's face, stood up and slightly clenched his fist. Then he punched out. Oh! A strong gust of wind suddenly shook with Noah's punch. It rolled away at the end of Noah's fist, as if a small tornado had blown past, causing the curtains and sheets to flutter in the wind. Noah could not help but smile when he felt the strength of the punch. It's at least doubled. Not to mention magic power, Noah's strength, durability, dexterity, and agility all crossed several levels and reached D level. Although Noah's physical ability was not as good as A's who had reached LV5, he was definitely stronger than those who were LV1 and LV2. Only those who were ranked at the top of LV3 and even those who were LV4 could match him. Under such circumstances, it was no joke to increase one's proficiency by more than a fold. However, Noah's physical ability did not actually increase. God's grace was actually a bit similar to Noah's rune magic. The sacred text, engraved on the body with God's blood as a medium, was like the runes directly engraved on the human body. The effect of these words could be strengthened. The difference was that the rune magic relied on the effect of magic to strengthen, while the sacred text drew out the possibilities in the person's body and used these possibilities as strengthening materials to add to the person's body. In the final analysis, it belonged to the category of strengthening, but it did not really increase Noah's physical ability. Looking at this strength, if I reach LV5, then I don't need to use any magic or magic. I can directly suppress Hercules's berserker with just my body, right? Maybe if I reach LV4, I can do it. In addition, the improvement of the basic ability of magic power also strengthened Noah's magic and magic. The improvement of this basic ability did not increase Noah's magic power, but it increased the effect and power of magic and magic. In this world, the consumption of magic was not magic power, but spiritual power. To be more precise, it should be said that the magic power in the world similar to the moon was transformed by vitality, and the magic power in this world was transformed by spiritual power. Moreover, this kind of magic power would not be produced in normal times. Only when magic was used would the spiritual power be transformed into magic power, and used to use magic. Therefore, the item of magic power in the basic ability improved the effect and power of magic, not the amount of magic power. Although Noah had not yet developed the magic in the ability value, the magic and magic he possessed could also be strengthened through the improvement of magic power. Sure enough, it's not a bad thing to get grace. Noah was suddenly immersed in his own improvement. Seeing Noah like this, Hestia opened her mouth and wanted to ask something, but in the end, she dispelled the idea. In fact, Hestia was very puzzled. She wondered why Noah's proficiency of magic power could also be improved. It must be known that the way to improve the basic ability of magic power was to use magic. But Noah's 3 magic items were still empty, so he had not learned magic yet. Could it be that Noah himself had magic? However, if humans did not rely on grace, then they would not be able to use magic, right? In this world, being able to use magic without receiving any favor was a privilege that only a very small number of races like the elves had. Humans did not have this privilege. So, how did Noah improve his proficiency of magic power without receiving any magic? This was Hestia's question. However, she did not want to get to the bottom of it. For Hestia, although Noah was someone she met yesterday, he was her first family in the mortal world. Therefore, Hestia was very concerned about Noah's feelings. From the conditions that Noah proposed when he chose to join her family yesterday, Hestia knew that Noah was a person who did not like to be restrained. So, before she was familiar enough with Noah to the extent that she was completely familiar with him, Hestia would not get to the bottom of it. After all, everyone had their own secrets. Even gods were the same. If you are curious about how strong you have become, you should go to the dungeon tomorrow and try again. Hestia suppressed her thoughts and jumped off the bed. In front of Noah, she put her hands on her waist and said, "Hey Noah, are you hungry? By the way, we haven't had dinner yet," Noah said to Hestia as he put on his clothes. "Wait a moment, I'll go out and buy something to eat." "Okay, come back quickly." Noah walked out of the room as Hestia called out to him. When Noah came out of the house, the sky was getting dark, and there were fewer people on the street. Noah walked down the stone stairs at the side of the house. After looking around, he walked towards a stall selling snacks. At this moment, Noah suddenly stopped in his tracks. His somewhat lazy eyes gradually turned serious, but the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Then Noah changed direction and walked into an alley on the side of the street. The alley was very dark. There were also magic stone lamps made of magic stones on the street. However, no one would place a magic stone lantern in an alley. Noah seemed to have deliberately walked into such a dark area, and came to the deepest part of the alley. Patter. After a few soft sounds, several figures suddenly appeared around Noah. Chapter 844. In the rather vast and dark alley, there was not the slightest sound in the surroundings, making the atmosphere a little heavy. It was believed that anyone would feel that the atmosphere in the air was very strange. In this space that was filled with a very strange atmosphere, Noah stood still and did not move at all. It was as if he was waiting for something. Then, in the surrounding darkness, several figures flew out silently. When they came to Noah's side, they landed on the ground with a thud, surrounding Noah in the middle. They were dressed in dark shirts that seemed to blend in with the darkness. They wore metal masks on their heads that covered half of their faces above the nose. There were about 20 of them. At the very least, there were indeed about 20 of the black-clothed people surrounding Noah. Outside the encirclement in front of Noah, 5 people slowly walked out of the darkness. They were dressed the same as the black-clothed people surrounding Noah. However, their auras were clearly many times stronger. The one in the lead had a pair of cat ears, and he was holding a rather simple-looking spear that was definitely not cheap. He was clearly a feline orc. On both sides, there were 2 small figures that were only about half the height of the young feline orc. They were 4 hominins. Due to their short stature and the fact that they were dressed in black and had their faces covered, even Noah couldn't tell if they were male or female. However, in the hands of the 4 hominins, they were respectively holding a sword, a mallet, a spear, and an axe, which were emitting dangerous arcs of light. Needless to say, the young feline orc and the 4 hominins were the leaders of these people. Therefore, while the black-clothed people surrounding Noah did not show any emotions as if they were carrying out a mission, only the young feline orc and the 4 hominins looked at Noah fearlessly, as if they were evaluating him, but they did not say a word. In response, Noah's expression was even more calm. In fact, there was a slight smile on Noah's face. "Good evening, everyone. Since you're all masked and dressed in black, it means that you don't want others to know your identity, so I won't ask who you are. You just need to answer some of my questions." Noah's overly calm expression surprised the young feline orc and the 4 hominins. However, the young feline orc and the 4 hominins did not say anything. However, the part of their mouths that was not covered curled up slightly in a condescending manner, and they maintained a disdainful attitude towards Noah's words. Oh, seeing this, Noah was not angry. Instead, he was delighted. "Since you're so disdainful of me, it means that you know some information about me to a certain extent? For example, I'm just a LV1 newbie or something." The expressions of the young feline orc and the 4 hominins changed. This made Noah curl his lips into a smile. "Looks like I'm right. This also proves that you're not a robber or violent group. You're here for me, right?" The expressions of the young feline orc and the 4 hominins gradually darkened, and they even became a little displeased. "You came out without saying anything. Wouldn't that expose any information?" Noah's expression became sarcastic. "How naive. Which idiot taught you guys?" As soon as this sentence was said, not only the young feline orc and the 4 hominins, but also the people in black around them exploded with anger. "Bastard." The young feline orc finally could not help but spit out words that were full of murderous intent. "Are you insulting our goddess? Your goddess?" Noah could not help but laugh. "So that's how it is. You guys are really from some clan tribe, huh? And the main god is a woman? Thank you so much for the information." At this moment, the young feline orc's expression became completely displeased. Even a fool would know that Noah's words were just a formality. "Then let me guess." The expression on Noah's face disappeared little by little. You should be sent by one of the goddesses on the Tower of Babel to stop me, right? Noah had just arrived in this world. Although he had caused quite a commotion when he came to this world yesterday, it should not be to the extent of making enemies. Besides, Loki also said that she would be responsible for shutting up the goddesses who had been seen naked by Noah. Then, the other party should not be a goddess who wanted to cause trouble for Noah, because he had seen her naked. Thinking about it this way, there was only one possibility. This morning, the inexplicable scorching gaze that was cast from the Tower of Babel. Based on the behavior of the attackers in front of him, Noah came to this conclusion. The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs did not expect that they would expose such a level of information without even saying a word. Of course, their expressions were extremely displeased, and their behavior could be regarded as a tacit acknowledgement of Noah's words. "Don't delay any longer," one of the dwarfs said in a deep voice. "This guy is too shrewd. The more we delay, the more information will be exposed. Let's finish the task given to us by the goddess quickly." Although the young feline orc's expression was extremely displeased, he nodded without hesitation, raised his hand, and waved it down heavily. Whoosh! The group of black-clothed people surrounding Noah suddenly rushed toward Noah with a gust of chilly wind, engulfing Noah's figure. However, in the next moment, in the center of the group of black-clothed people, a burst of bright golden light burst out. Bang! A violent shockwave suddenly spread out, and all of the black-clothed people who had surrounded the bright golden light were sent flying, accompanied by a burst of pili-pa-la, and a series of muffled groans. Those black-clothed men were like they were hit by a truck. They either smashed into the wall of the alley, or were dragged along the ground and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Noah, whose figure was engulfed by the black-clothed people a moment ago, reappeared in his full appearance. Around him, golden ripples reverberated in the space like water waves, covering the space behind Noah. What is that? The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were completely stunned, until Noah's sigh echoed in the air. If you want to attack someone, you should at least prepare a decent attacker. What is this level of attack? The moment his words fell, the golden ripples that covered the space behind Noah suddenly lit up. Various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on, emerged from the golden ripples. Each weapon was surrounded by an ancient aura, but they were all extremely luxurious and gorgeous in shape, and their tips were pointed forward. A wild warning rose in the hearts of the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs, causing them to scatter without hesitation. Whoosh! In the next moment, about 7 or 8 weapons shot out from the golden ripples, pierced through the space, and landed where the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were just a moment ago. Bang! The ground was directly blasted apart, setting off a violent wind wave, accompanied by a burst of flames, suddenly appearing. The young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs were affected by the wind wave and fire. Their figures that had just dodged were shaken to the side, and they lost their balance. In the most unsightly posture, they slammed hard on the ground and only stopped after rubbing for a distance. "Oh, you think you can dodge a Grady relic?" Noah sneered. "Then, how about adding a few more this time?" After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands, and a few more golden ripples appeared behind him. Together with the rest of the golden ripples, half of the gorgeous relic was ejected. Like arrows on a bow, they were aimed at the young feline orc and the 4 dwarfs. Then there are 15 of them this time. You'd better avoid them. Looking at the space behind them being filled with golden ripples, and the extremely dangerous weapons poking out of the golden ripples and aiming at them like arrows, the cat-human young man and the 4 humanoids understood what was going on. They had kicked an iron plate. Chapter 845. Whoosh! A loud and neat sound was heard. All kinds of weapons such as knives, swords, spears, halberds, and so on, that were surrounded by a golden glow, were like bullets or lasers that were shot out of the gun. They were all aimed at the corner of the dark alley. Woo 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 woo. The young catman and the 4 dwarfs who were filled with a deadly sense of crisis let out a roar. They held their weapons and did not retreat. Instead, they moved forward and waved their weapons at the rain of relics in an attempt to deflect them. Clang, 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 clang. It was the sound of the weapons in the hands of the young Catman, and the four dwarfs colliding with the relics. Clang! It was the sound of the relics that were knocked away at the same time. Clang! After blocking part of the relics, they were finally unable to block the rest of the relics. They could only hurriedly put up their weapons to block the relics. The weapons in the hands of the four dwarfs sounded like they were wailing. Bang! They were the only ones who still had the strength to collide with the relics that were shot at them. However, they chose to dodge the relics and let the relics fall to the ground, causing the ground to explode. There was a sound of the impact. It was just a short moment of confrontation. The scene had actually become so chaotic. Noah said softly as he glanced at the young Catman and the four dwarfs who were blocking the 15E grade relic attacks. Sure enough, you're different from the guy who fell there. Although it's only the lowest level of relic that was blocked, it's still a relic after all, and there are 15 of them. Conservatively speaking, your level should be above LV. For right? In Noah's opinion, only people who were at the level of AIC, Tiana, and Tyan could block all the relics that were shot at them. That was to say, the four dwarfs who were holding various weapons should be at level 5 as well. As for the young Catman, I feel like you're more powerful than AIC. Noah stared at the young Catman. You should be at level 6, right? The young cat human said nothing with a gloomy expression. He simply raised his spear at Noah. Not only the young Catman, but even the four small humans, who seemed to be in a slightly bad shape, raised their weapons and charged toward Noah without hesitation. Seeing the expressions of the young Catman and the four little humans, Noah simply smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Wang. Sounds of vibrations began to reverberate, causing the golden ripples to once again spit out luxurious and gorgeous treasures. On the surface of these treasures, the aura they carried was much more condensed and vigorous. Without a doubt, these relics were much more powerful than the relics that he had used before. Even though the number of treasures did not change, these treasures were on another level. Those were all D-grade treasures. The young Catman and the four little people tightened their grip on their weapons. There was no other way. Only those who had experienced it themselves would know how much pressure it would be to face the extremely luxurious attack of the Gate of Babylon. At this moment, the young Catman and the four little people seemed to be holding cold weapons, and were ready to fight against a machine gun that would pull the trigger at any time. This scene was enough to make people wonder if he was deliberately courting death. Look at you guys. Even if you're killed, you won't say anything, right? Noah said indifferently. However, there are only a few clans with 1 level 6 and 4 level 5s in Eulalia. The range has been narrowed down a lot. Noah's upraised hand dropped. So let me thank you for the information that you brought. The treasures that emerged from the golden ripples suddenly became sluggish. Bang, 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 bang. Immediately after that, as gunshots rang out, the treasures turned into the most terrifying arrows and rained down on the young cat person and the four humans like raindrops. Boom. An astonishing explosion shook the dark alleyway, bringing with it a burst of scorching flames that rose into the sky. Many people on the street near the alley heard the explosion, causing many people on the street to look at each other and whisper to each other. There were even many adventurers who began to move in the direction of the explosion and the blazing fire rising from it. As for the rest of the ordinary residents, although they were noisy and restless, they were not surprised at all. After all, this was Eulalia, the most lively city in the world where many clans of the god gathered. If there were clans, naturally there would be all kinds of disputes. Therefore, Eulalia never lacked disputes. What it lacked was peace. The golden ripples that filled the space behind him slowly shrank and disappeared. Noah stood at the spot where he hadn't moved a single step since the beginning. He looked around at the men in black who were lying on the ground before he raised his eyes and looked ahead. Ugh! The four dwarfs who were holding all kinds of weapons were lying on the ground with wounds all over their bodies. Their bodies trembled slightly as if they were trying to get up, but they were unable to do so. Pa! With a crisp sound, the young cat human knelt on the ground with one knee. The long spear in his hand was also stabbed into the ground beside him, and the young cat human used it to support his body. Although the young cat human was not covered in wounds like the four dwarfs, the young cat-human's clothes were torn, and the skin under the cracks was bleeding. It could be said that he was dripping with blood. There was a trace of blood at the corner of the young cat-human's mouth. Through the 2 holes in the mask that covered half of his face above his nose, he stared at Noah and said in a deep voice, "You'd showed mercy." Hearing this, Noah curled his lips. If the premise is that all of you must die in the end, then it can indeed be considered as being merciful. Why? The young cat-human stared at Noah. Why didn't you kill us? Why? Noah looked at the young cat-human with a half-smile. Do you want to die? The young cat-human did not continue the topic. He only laughed coldly. Don't think that you can get any information from me. Hearing the young catman's words, Noah didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned around and left. Really, you can't learn your lesson. After saying this, Noah walked out of the alley without hesitation. He did not even look back. The cat-human youth looked at the black-clothed people lying on the ground, then looked at the 4 humanoids who were struggling to get up. He lowered his head and bit the corner of his mouth until it started to bleed. Really can't learn your lesson? The young cat-human understood this sentence. This was because Noah had said it before. If they hadn't said anything, nothing would have been exposed. Noah, you must have gotten enough information, right? Damn it. In the dark alley, only the young cat-human's regretful voice could be heard. Noah, who came out of another alley, saw that the street had become a little more lively. He turned his head and looked in a direction. There, the towering Tower of Babel was like an indomitable giant at night, giving people an indescribable sense of majesty. Recalling the scorching gaze he felt during the day, the attack of the young cat-human and the 4 dwarfs, and the information he got from them, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. There is 1 LV 6 and 4 LV, 5 members. Is the main god a family of a goddess? Noah was quite puzzled that he was targeted by a goddess for no reason. If it weren't for the fact that the young catman and the 4 little humans didn't carry any murderous intent, Noah wouldn't have just been puzzled. Could it be that the gods are playing tricks because they are bored? Noah smacked his lips. No matter what, don't touch my bottom line. Otherwise, even if I don't want to cause any trouble, there is a limit to my patience. After saying this, Noah walked towards the stall on the street. He still had to feed the starving lowly goddess. Chapter 846. Kacha. With a slight sound of the door opening, a strong man with a height of more than 2 meters, full of bulging muscles, like an iron tower, with a strong expression on his face, like a rock, walked in from the outside and came to the most luxurious room in the whole of Eulalie. With a closer look, there was a pair of pig ears on the head of the strong man, telling others that he was an orc of the pig tribe. And this was the highest level of the Tower of Babel. Only the main god of the clan tribe, who ruled the whole of Eulalie, was qualified to use this place of residence. The Tower of Babel was the property of the guild. However, the guild had provided the upper level of the Tower of Babel for some gods to live in. Whether it was the environment, services, or attractions, Eulalie's Tower of Babel was without a doubt the most luxurious in the whole city. Therefore, only the main gods of the extremely rich and powerful clan tribe could live in the upper level of this tower. The clan tribe of the strong orc was ranked here. Furthermore, it was at the highest level. There were 2 most powerful clan tribes in the whole of Eulalie. One was the clan tribe of Loki. The main god of this clan tribe, which was Loki himself, was more inclined to live with the children of the clan tribe than in such a luxurious place, so he did not live in the Tower of Babel. But the other main god of the clan tribe of Eulalie lived here. Freya. The clan tribe of Freya and clan tribe of Loki, which were run by this goddess, were the 2 clan tribes at the top of Eulalie. At this time, in the room where the strong orc was, the stunning goddess was here. She had delicate and fair skin that reminded people of snow. She had a tall and slender body and limbs. She had a beautiful face that made people lose their minds at a glance. She had a perfect devil's body and a mature temperament that was like a shining light. She was the goddess of beauty and also the goddess of love. She was in charge of love and beauty. She had a beauty that no other goddess in the entire heaven could reach. Such an existence was standing by the glass window facing the scenery outside the Tower of Babel, sticking her stunning beauty to it. Her pretty face was extremely red, and she was twisting her body as if she was in heat. Her intoxicating eyes were full of passion and infatuation. If Noah was present, he would definitely be able to recognize that kind of burning gaze. That was the burning gaze that Noah felt from the top of the Tower of Babel during the day. Lady Freya. The strong orc didn't seem to be surprised at all that the goddess he worshipped the most was in a daze. He spoke with a firm tone. We failed. I know. Freya did not even turn her head back. Her gaze was fixed on a certain direction of Eulalia Street, as if she could see a certain figure that made her feel hot all over since this morning. Her tone was full of love. I saw everything. The Tower of Babel was located in the center of Olalai. There was an extraordinary distance from the center of Olalai, the highest floor of the Tower of Babel, which was at least 50 stories high, to a certain location on the street that Freya was gazing at now. But Freya's eyes still saw it clearly. She saw the figure that made this beautiful goddess so infatuated that she could even be called crazy. To be more precise, she saw the brilliance in the depths of the figure's body. It was the brilliance that made Freya lose herself and become obsessed with it like never before. To be able to make this beautiful goddess give up everything without hesitation, just to be able to take a look, it was something of such an intense degree. The goddess named Freya actually had a pair of very special eyes. This pair of eyes could see through the essence of people's souls. It was not the power of a god, but a congenital ability. Just like how human eyes could see things, Freya's eyes could also see people's souls. Therefore, this goddess could easily erase any obstacles and distance, and see the brilliance in the depths of people's souls. In front of this goddess, no matter how good or bad a person was, it was impossible to hide. Freya, on the other hand, was infatuated with those who possessed strong and dazzling souls. From the beginning, Freya had always used this pair of eyes to see through a person's essence one step earlier than other gods, and take the person she liked into her arms. Because she could directly see through the soul, Freya could easily distinguish a person's essence and talent, and poach people with superior souls and talents into her clan. No one could refuse Freya. After all, Freya's magical beauty was not something that anyone could ignore. It was not only because Freya's appearance was unparalleled, but also because as a goddess of beauty, she was born with the ability to charm any existence. Even a god would not be able to resist this charm. It was precisely because of this that the members of Freya's clan were all heroes in ancient times, and their strength was fundamentally different from others. This was why Freya's clan occupied a place at the top of this labyrinth city. Loki also knew that Freya's eyes had this power, and every time he secretly cursed it as the most damn cheating ability. And this time, Freya saw through Noah's essence more than anyone else. Therefore, Freya was infatuated, intoxicated, and even about to go crazy. It's really. Freya reached out and pressed on the glass window, as if she wanted to tightly hold on to the figure that haunted her dreams, and murmured as if intoxicated. It's so beautiful. Noah's soul was a domineering existence that even the daybreak star pattern could not activate, materialize, and turn into a weapon. Instead, an external weapon became a part of the soul. Noah's soul was something that even Gaia and Aleia claimed that no one could compare to. Even Bio and Draeger's consciousness that resided in Noah's soul was called contaminated. They even tried their best to persuade Noah to never let it be tainted by anything else, the purest existence. In addition, Noah still had the essence that would stand behind him no matter which world he was in, supporting him. As the darling of each world, he was the only one who could enter the space between worlds. Who else could have a soul purer and more dazzling than Noah's? It had been hundreds of millions of years since Freya was born. During this time, she had seen the dazzling souls of many heroes that were worshipped by everyone in the world. However, Freya could say without hesitation that even if all the souls she had seen in hundreds of millions of years were added together, they would not be as dazzling as Noah's soul. It was definitely the most dazzling and pure soul that Freya had ever seen. Freya was also confident that from now on, she would never see a soul that was more dazzling than this. No, a soul that was even a little bit more dazzling than this. Undoubtedly, he is only LV1, but even a LV6 for LV5S, 7 LV4 S, and 13 LV3S could not do anything to him. What a dazzling and powerful man. When she thought of the moment when Noah showed his power through her eyes, and the dazzling brilliance that his soul emitted, Freya clamped her legs tightly, desperately enduring the heat from her lower abdomen. For Freya, who loved pure and dazzling souls, nothing could attract her more than Noah. I always thought that the life of a god was more precious than the life of a mortal, but for you, I can finally confidently shout that even if I lose my life, I only hope that you will look at me. Freya murmured to herself with a fanatical tone, as if she was talking to her true love. So I love you, you must be the goddess of love and beauty, Freya. However, not all love was beautiful. As the goddess of love, Freya had both the beauty and ugliness of love, the positive and negative divinity of both. The unrestrained and cruel goddess of beauty. This was the essence of the goddess named Freya. You must be mine. You must, Freya shouted intoxicatedly, and looked at the soul that was countless times more dazzling than the sun in the dark night. A somewhat cruel smile hung on a face that would captivate any man. Chapter 847. Noah Dori LV. 1 Strength. A822, S968 Durability. A845, S980 Dexterity. A837, S972 Agility. A861, S993 Magic. C684, A888 Magic. Skills Frowny Face Protection from the World Permanent Skills. Equal to Luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. Looking at the new ability value, Hestia was completely numb to it this time. She was completely numb to it. 3 days. In just 3 days, Noah's basic ability value had been upgraded from the initial state of I stage to almost S stage of the all-around ability value. To be honest, Hestia herself was surprised that she could still be so calm after seeing this result. This was entirely because Noah's upgrade was too incredible. In just 3 days, he had improved to the point where he was close to S stage in all ability points. Other people might not be able to upgrade one of their basic abilities to S stage in 3 years. Clearly knowing this, Hestia couldn't feel a trace of surprise at all, which proved how much of an impact Noah's ability value had on Hestia in the past 3 days after he had upgraded it several times. Here you go. After translating the sacred text of the ability value into the common language, Hestia handed the paper with the status of the ability value to Noah. Her tone was somewhat helpless. Just like what you said at the beginning, you've almost reached S stage in your all-around ability in 2 to 3 days. Congratulations. Hearing Hestia's monotonous voice, Noah took the paper and laughed. But you don't look very happy. How should I put it? Hestia sighed. It's not that I'm not happy, it's because I expected this result. Now I can't be happy even if I want to. In the past 3 days, Hestia helped Noah update his ability value almost every day. After all, Noah was the only member of Hestia's clan. Unlike other clan, there were so many people, but only one main god. If she wanted to update them one by one, she would be annoyed to death. Therefore, other clan generally updated their ability value batch by batch in 1 or 2 weeks, or even 1 or 2 months. It was impossible for them to update their ability value as frequently as Noah. Because of this, watching Noah's ability value increase at an astonishing speed, Hestia had long been mentally prepared that Noah would reach the goal in a very short time. How could she be happy like this? Well, let's not talk about how long it's been. Noah, you're the only one who's reached S stage in all ability points, right? Hestia patted her cute cheeks and tried to cheer herself up. Apart from you, I don't think anyone else has almost reached S stage in all ability value. It's possible for a single basic ability to reach S stage, but it's unlikely for all ability values to reach S stage. Noah looked at the ability value translated by Hestia on the paper in his hand and nodded. Everyone had something they were good at. It wasn't difficult to specialize in this area and reach S stage. For a magister like Riveria, who only focused on improving magic, It wasn't strange for her to reach S stage in magic power. However, it was precisely because of this that magisters only excelled in magic power. As for the rest, such as strength, durability, dexterity, and dexterity, they were definitely not as good as magic power. In fact, they were even worse than ordinary adventurers. Therefore, it wasn't strange for a basic ability to be upgraded to S stage in Eulalie's world. However, it was almost unheard of for all ability values to reach S stage. Moreover, under normal circumstances, as long as one's basic ability value reaches the 6th stage, that is D stage, they are qualified to level up, Hestia explained. That's why very few people can train their basic ability value to S stage before leveling up. For someone like you who has almost reached S stage in all ability values, you should have leveled up a long time ago. Leveled up. Noah nodded thoughtfully. Hestia had said that the limit of every basic ability was 999 proficiency points. In that case, Noah had basically touched this limit. It was time for him to think about leveling up. Hey Hestia, Noah asked. What should I do if I want to level up? Continue to accumulate experience points? Surely not, right? Hestia had said that under normal circumstances, when one's ability value had almost reached S stage, they should have leveled up a long time ago. However, Noah hadn't leveled up. This meant that he had to meet other conditions to level up. In response to Noah's question, Hestia only replied with one sentence. If you want to level up, you have to achieve great feats. Great feats? Noah was slightly startled. You have to achieve feats that only true heroes can achieve. Miracles that even us gods have to praise, Hestia said very seriously. For example, you have to defeat opponents who are stronger than you and gain more experience points. This is the condition for leveling up. Defeat opponents who are stronger than you? Noah was completely speechless. Then how is that possible? It wasn't because Noah didn't have the courage to challenge the strong, and didn't have the confidence to defeat opponents who were stronger than him. It was because this result was a little unrealistic. Why was it unrealistic? Because in this world, could there really be a stronger opponent than Noah? Noah was the God-slayer. Even the gods in the heavens had been killed by him. Perhaps the gods in this world could meet the requirements if they brought out their true strength, but the gods in the lower realm wouldn't use their strength. In that case, where could Noah find a stronger opponent than himself? Therefore, this fact was like a basin of cold water poured on Noah's heart. What else? Noah couldn't help but ask. Is there no other way to level up? No. Hestia shook her head. At least so far, all the children in the lower realm can only level up after achieving a certain amount of feats. Noah's brows furrowed tightly. Now this was troublesome. Noah didn't expect that he would encounter such a problem in this world. Could it be that in this world, he couldn't achieve the goal of leveling up? Noah finally began to worry. Well, you've just received my favor for 3 days. Although you've grown quickly, it's still too early to think about leveling up. You'd better focus on other things first. Hestia comforted him. For example, you can see if there's any chance for you to obtain magic. Magic? Hearing Hestia's words, Noah also remembered this matter. After all, you have 3 empty slots for magic. This talent is very rare. Hestia smiled. It would be a pity if you don't find a way to obtain magic. Hearing Hestia's words, Noah nodded and fell into deep thought. The next day, Noah didn't disturb Hestia, who was still sleeping. He went straight out of the house and walked in the direction of the central square of the Tower of Babel. Although his basic ability had basically reached its peak, and there seemed to be some small problems with leveling up, Noah still wanted to try it himself before making a decision. Therefore, like the previous 3 days, Noah moved in the direction of the dungeon early in the morning. However, when Noah arrived at the central square, an unexpected scene appeared in front of him, which made him stop in his tracks. In front of the Tower of Babel, a group of adventurers occupied a small area and gathered neatly together. At the forefront of this group, there was a flag. It was a flag embroidered with a clown. That's the flag of Loki's clan? Chapter 848. Just like the guilds in the world of fairy tale, Each clan in this world had its own coat of arms. Because Noah and Hastia's clan had just been established, and its reputation wasn't that great, the matter of the coat of arms wasn't urgent for the time being, so it hadn't been decided yet. However, for the other family clans, especially those powerful family clans, their coat of arms was proof of their family clans. The clown-like pattern was the coat of arms of Loki's clan. Obviously, the adventurers gathered under the flag embroidered with the coat of arms of Loki's clan were all members of Loki's clan. One of the two most powerful clans of Eulalia gathered here, causing the surrounding adventurers to discuss spiritedly, but they also unconsciously avoided that small open space. Under such circumstances, although the members of Loki's clan didn't line up in an orderly manner, they still carried out their solemn discipline meticulously. Not a single one of them dared to make a sound at this moment. Seeing this scene from afar, Noah scratched his cheek. Could it be that Loki's clan is preparing for an expedition? An expedition. That is, a long journey, a long march. Now the underground city had been explored to the 58th floor. However, below the 58th floor, it was still a domain that no one had reached before. As one of the two most powerful clans of Eulalia, Loki's clan was at the forefront of attacking the underground city. And to reach such a deep domain like the 58th floor, even the time to go back and forth would take a long time. Since they gathered here with such fanfare, Loki's clan must be planning to go on an expedition to the underground city, get through the 58th floor, and reach the domain that no one had reached before, that is the 59th floor. This trip would probably take at least 1 or 2 months, right? Thinking like this, Noah's eyes swept around the expeditionary army of Loki's clan, and immediately fixed on a small group in front of the flag. There, led by Finn, a group of Loki's clan level 1 adventurers gathered together. Tiona was there. Tiona was there. Riveria is here. Naturally, Ace was there as well. She wore light armor, wore light blue clothes, and had a long sword at her waist. Her blonde hair fluttered in the wind. In addition, there were 3 other people that Noah had never seen before in the group of level 1 adventurers. One was a dwarf who looked to be 50 or 60 years old. One of them was a young orc with a lightning-shaped tattoo on his face. He looked like a bad boy with wolf-like ears and a tail. The remaining one was a very pure elf girl with long hair that reached her waist even when tied up. Although Noah had never seen these 3 people before, he had heard about them from Hestia. The dwarf with the appearance of an old man was named Gareth Landlock. He was a member of the Loki clan's leader camp along with Finn and Riveria. His level was as high as LV 6, and his title was Chongjia. The young orc was named Bert Roga. He was a level 1 adventurer of the Loki clan along with Ace, Tiona, and Tiona. His level was as high as LV 5, and his title was Fierce Wolf. As for the pure elf girl, her name was Leafia Villides. It was said that she had excellent magic power and magic. She was famous as a perfect rearguard magus in the Loki clan. As the successor of Riveria, who was also a magus, she was in the process of cultivation. Therefore, Leafia's level was only LV3, but she was nurtured as the pillar of the next generation of Loki's clan. Even if she was not a level 1 adventurer, she was able to sneak into the group of level 1 adventurers. At this point, the leaders of the Loki clan, one of the 2 most powerful clans of Eulalia, were all gathered together. Even Noah didn't believe that such a camp would not go on an expedition to the depths of the dungeon. No matter what, let's run away first. Noah made this decision without hesitation. If I'm seen, I always have a premonition that there will be trouble. After saying this, Noah quickened his pace and walked towards the entrance of the Tower of Babel, as if he didn't see anything. Unfortunately, Noah was still discovered. Perhaps Ace felt that the surrounding people were looking at her differently from those who coveted her appearance and reputation. When her companions were talking, Ace, who had been silent all this time, inadvertently glanced in the direction of Noah. Ace saw Noah quickening his pace towards the Tower of Babel. Ace was stunned for a moment, and then without hesitation, she rushed out. Ace! Finn and his companions were suddenly surprised. Hearing the noise, Noah thought to himself, "Oh no!" He suddenly ran toward the entrance of the Tower of Babel. However, at this time, it was too late to speed up. In terms of physical ability, Ace, who was at LV 5 was better. In addition, the location of Loki's family was not far from the entrance of the Tower of Babel. With A's dexterity ability, she arrived there in almost 2 or 3 seconds. Therefore, Noah only felt a gust of wind from afar. And then the blonde girl, whose appearance was comparable to a goddess, appeared in front of him as if she had teleported. A pair of clear and transparent eyes stared at Noah as if to say, "I will never let you pass." Noah had no choice but to stop in a hurry. He looked at the expressionless but beautiful girl's pretty face, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Why did you stop me?" Hearing Noah's voice, Ace tilted her head and asked very seriously, "Why did I run?" Noah said bluntly, "Because you are here, that's why I ran." Ace blinked her eyes and seemed to be a little confused, but because Noah answered, Ace did not hide her answer. "Because you ran, that's why I chased you." Noah was speechless. Who would believe this reason? If she chased after someone because they were running away, did that mean that she would chase after everyone who was running away? "Ah, little brother? It's you again?" At this time, the senior group of Loki's family also noticed that Ace suddenly ran out to stop Noah. Led by Finn, Riveria and Tioni showed a look of understanding, and Tioni was even surprised. Only Gareth, Bert, and Rafia were puzzled. However, the high-level group belonging to Loki's clan still gathered in the direction of Noah, while their subordinates looked at each other in dismay. Seeing this scene, Noah understood. "I can't escape." "Hello, little brother." Tioni laughed happily. "We meet again. Seems like I've been seeing you a lot lately," Tioni teased. "Seems like we are fated to meet." As the leader, Finn glanced at Ace, who was blocking Noah, and shrugged. "We are all adventurers. It's not strange for us to meet here. But you are the only one who could make AIC chase after you." Finn's words made Noah and Ace both speechless, and at the same time, it also made one of the members of the group unhappy. "Speaking of which, who are you, kid?" Bert, who had a lightning tattoo on his face, stepped forward and looked at Noah with an obedient look. "Never heard of this guy. Where are you from?" Being stared at by Bert like that, Noah frowned. Could it be that he had offended this guy? "Bert, you are being very rude," Riveria said with a serious face. "Besides, the other party isn't some small fry either. He forced AIC to retreat before he even received the favor." As soon as these words came out, Gareth and Rafia, who didn't know Noah, opened their eyes wide. Gareth looked at Noah with a curious gaze. "No wonder I felt he was familiar. Isn't he the guy Loki put on a wanted list?" Unlike Gareth, Bert's unruly face darkened, and his gaze towards Noah became fierce. "Is it you? The one who dares to say he didn't accept the favor, and forced Ace to retreat?" Bert's unfriendly expression made Noah's frown grow deeper. As expected, trouble has appeared. Chapter 849. Raising his eyes slightly, Noah looked at Bert, who was glaring at him with a dangerous gaze and expression. It was obvious that Bert was different from the other members of Loki's clan, and had an extremely obvious hostility toward him. Noah's heart was filled with confusion. Why is this guy so hostile to me? Is it related to the cat youth who attacked me not long ago, and the 4 little people? While Noah was lost in thought on the side, Tiona said in a displeased tone, "Hey Bert, why are you angry over there?" "Huh. Why are you asking something you already know the answer to?" Bert didn't even look at Tiona. He still stared at Noah and said mercilessly, "A guy who didn't receive the favor can force the LV-5As to retreat? Do you really think we LV-5s are made of mud?" "Oh," Finn said indifferently. "In other words, Bert, you don't believe this matter?" Of course. Bert didn't care that the person involved was in front of him and sneered. "How can I believe this kind of thing that is obviously a lie?" Hearing Bert's words, Tiona's expression became unfriendly. Even Ace slightly raised her eyebrows and looked at Bert. "I didn't lie." There was no doubt that Noah was able to force Ace to retreat without receiving the favor. It must be Loki, Ace, Tiona, and Tiona who brought back the news of their clan. If Bert doubts this matter, doesn't that mean Ace and the others are lying? After that, we also saw his ability value. Tiona also said. Loki told us himself that at that time, His ability value was all in the initial state of ice stage, and even his proficiency was 0. Do you want to doubt Loki's words? You also said that Loki told you. You don't understand the divine script, right? Bert curled his lips. That Lord God sometimes does inexplicable things. Maybe he deliberately said this for some reason. Hearing this, Ace reacted. I also understand the divine script. That one sentence made Bert wilt. If AIC could also read the sacred text, then AIC, who had personally witnessed Noah's ability, would be able to prove the truth of this matter. Bert, who knew Alice well, knew that she wouldn't lie. It would be better to say that he didn't know how to lie. Once Ace lied, it would be too easy to tell. After all, this girl was not good at expressing her emotions, nor was she good at hiding them. Embarrassed, Bert could only glare angrily at Noah. Anyway, I definitely don't believe that this guy can force AIC to retreat. If you want me to believe you, then let's have a match here. After saying that, Bert seemed to want to prove that he was serious. He pulled out the hand that had been in his pocket all this time, and lifted one leg slightly. He stared at Noah, and the aura of a ferocious beast surged from his body. Noah didn't say a word. This was because Noah wanted to observe for a while why this werewolf named Bert was so hostile towards him. Moreover, Noah also wanted to know if this werewolf had anything to do with the young werewolf, and the 4 werewolves that attacked him not long ago. Although he had never heard of a LV6 werewolf in the Rocky clan, nor did he hear of 4 LV5 werewolves in the Rocky clan, but even if he was not a Rocky clan, it did not mean that he had nothing to do with the Rocky clan. That was why Noah wanted to observe for a while, and did not say anything. Now it seemed that this werewolf named Bert was just being arrogant and unruly. Reality proved that Noah's thinking was still too one-sided. That's so ugly, Bert, Tiona mocked. You think I don't know that you're just unhappy that AIC cares so much about the little brother? The ferocious Bert's expression froze. Noah, who noticed this, raised an eyebrow. Could it be that this werewolf called Bert was looking for trouble with him because of his relationship with AIC? Haven't you been in a bad mood for the past few days? Tiona mocked. After the fight with the little brother, AIC has been in a daze these days. After you found out that AIC was in a daze because she was thinking about the little brother, you've been very unhappy. Now you're looking for trouble with the little brother. You're really embarrassing yourself. Shut up. Stupid Amazon. Bert's face turned green and white, and he finally couldn't help but become angry. Don't tell me you believe this kind of nonsense. Can you force us LV5 werewolves without receiving the favor? When did our LV5 become so cheap? Hearing Bert's words, Tiona was about to retort, but Finn on the side spoke with a blank expression. Okay, that's enough. The commanding tone made Tiona and Bert shut their mouths. As the leader of Loki's tribe, Finn's words were undoubtedly very important. Even the unruly Bert wouldn't retort when Finn used a commanding tone. After spitting a mouthful of saliva, Bert turned around and didn't look at Noah. Apologies. Finn smiled at Noah. My people were too rude, please forgive them. Forget it. Noah, who knew that Bert was jealous, laughed and shook his head. It's not like I haven't been picked on before. I'm used to it. With that, Noah glanced at Bert. But in the future, watch your mouth. You. Bert turned his head and stared at Noah. His eyes were filled with ferocity. Before Bert could say anything, Finn spoke first. Let's not talk about this. Are you preparing to enter the dungeon? Have you prepared a map this time? Finn's words made Noah feel helpless. What's wrong? Finn asked curiously. Did you encounter a difficult problem? It's considered a difficult problem? Noah sighed. The dungeon map that I have is only up to level 12. Speaking of this matter, Noah was indeed helpless. Although he had found a map of the dungeon up to level 10 in the bookstore outside, that was the limit. Because in the dungeon the most important thing was a map. That would prevent many problems. Therefore, maps from the dungeon would usually be sold at a high price in the guild. No one would sell them in the bookstore. The dungeon before level 10 wasn't that dangerous. The maps weren't as valuable as the lower levels. The value of maps from the 10th floor onwards was much higher. That was the problem. Because Noah was still LV. 1. The guild didn't sell the maps after level 10 to him for his safety. If he wanted to buy the maps of the dungeon's middle, lower, and even deeper levels, he had to be considered by the guild to be able to explore there. For example, he had to meet the strength requirement of the corresponding level or form a team. And Noah was only LV. 1 at the moment, and he was alone. Under such circumstances, the guild used safety as an excuse to refuse to sell the maps of the dungeon outside of the lower levels to Noah. They also advised Noah not to bite off more than he could chew and to at least reach LV 2 or form a team. Only then would they sell the maps of the middle levels to him. Noah was speechless. This also caused Noah to wander around level 12 for the past few days. Otherwise, he would have been able to reach the S level earlier, right? Is that so? Finn's eyes flashed slightly, and then he invited. Then do you want to move with us temporarily? Move together? Noah was stunned. Move together? Even AIC and the others were stunned. We are planning to enter level 59, and we will pass through level 18 on the way, Finn said. There, some adventurers are also selling maps. You can move with us temporarily. Wait until we reach level 18 and buy the maps, then it won't be too late to move. Hearing this, Noah narrowed his eyes and stared at Finn. Finn met Noah's gaze without a trace of guilt. After a while, Noah seemed to understand something and smiled. In that case, I will have to trouble you. The smile on Finn's face deepened. We are all adventurers. You don't have to be so polite. Noah shrugged non-committally. In this way, the next itinerary was set. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.